Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, is available on all mainstream audio and video feeds. Find out how you can support the show by heading over to patreon.com/Critical Frames.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast. We are very excited to be back with you this week. Less news, no state of play. We get to kind of just feel out what we've been doing this week and talk about a few topics that we have that are pretty interesting. And I think it's going to be pretty chill. I think it's going to be really fun and really relaxed. We're using a new recording program. Hopefully that goes well. And
Pray for
we
us.
should have, I think when you're listening to this, I think we'll have our official artwork up, which is pretty freaking exciting. It looks
Indeed.
dope as hell, if I don't say so myself. But yeah, over to you, Joe. How are you doing this week? Are you excited to be here?
No, Brian, I'm sick of being here. You drag me out every week, and
Yeah,
I'm tired of it.
I forced you to be here. Yeah.
No. I'm very excited. Been less gaming this week, and we'll get onto that obviously later on in the show. But less gaming, more real life stuff, and I've been kind of just reading more about games than playing them in many ways.
I mean, that's been a lot of my life too, honestly. But we don't like touching grass here, Joe. So you need to knock that off.
Okay, I'll stop. Sorry.
Do something unproductive with your life, please.
Well, I'm sorry because I'm going to hit you up with more live stuff. Like I bought a
No, I want to hear it all.
Station.
You bought a what?
A calisthenics station.
Okay, very nice.
Which has like a pull-up bar on it and a dip, some dip bars, and and some push-up handles that I don't use because you can just use the floor. But it's nice, dude. And the best part about it is the one I ordered was like on sale at £100, and they sent me the one that was £200 on sale. So I got the better version for cheaper.
Heck yeah, dude. That's stay winning. That's awesome.
I was like, oh shit, like because the one I ordered, I knew it was. I was like, they've sent like a pulley system with it. I'm like, my version didn't have this. So yeah, it has like I don't have to use because I have like a pull up bands to help me.
Yeah.
And I don't need to use those. I can use the assisted sort of, how would you say, kneeling pad that comes with it. So,
you're gonna be so jacked, like episode 150 of this podcast. We should get like a video of you just crushing a DualSense controller in one hand, and then use that on Twitter to like blow us up, like the DualSense crush.
No, I should crush the Xbox controller. That'll add.
Oh yeah, while wearing your Critical Frames T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's how you do it. Yeah. It's like we're not fanboys here, but fuck Xbox. Thank you. Yeah. So.
What about you, Brian?
Pretty good. Yeah. So I've had a pretty good week. It's been a lot more relaxed than last week. Last week kind of sucked. My daughter has been in such a good mood. We've been taking her outside, playing with the bubble. She has like a bubble blower machine. She's been loving, and we just realized that she has been enjoying. She loves listening to music and dancing so much. So we signed her up for dance classes. She's not even 2 yet. So over the summer, she's going to have little dance classes. Hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to see what she gets out of that.
I know she's young and everything, so they probably won't be specific, but what is the dancing going to entail? Like what?
I don't like what I envision in my head is just a bunch of little kids her age running around circle flailing their arms, but we're paying for it. So there should be something structured, I would hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then this week we had a couple people come out to give us quotes. We're going to have a fence put around our front yard. I don't know how well you remember, Joe, from the one time you came to my house. We have a little front yard. It's not very big.
Yeah.
We don't have a backyard at all. So there's really no way for River to play outside.
Sure.
So we're going to get a nice fenced in front yard, and then she can play outside. Obviously, we're not going to let her play outside unless we're out there, but at least it'll be fenced in so she can run around. Yeah. So we got a couple quotes for that, which is always fun. It'll be nice to get that project done. I'm so blessed because before I was married, I wouldn't really save for things, and I would just kind of buy things and pay them off, like with a credit card or something. And Erica's so good at money management. Like every year or so, we just do a big project that like I can't believe we can afford, but she's just smart with money. Like last summer, we got a whole new roof put on our house. I can't remember if that was before or after you were here. I'm guessing it was after. you were here.
I think the roof came after.
Yeah, so we got a whole new roof, and then a couple years before that, we got a whole new driveway, and now we're gonna get fenced in yard. So pretty excited about that. So that's pretty much like the touch grass stuff of my week.
Yeah.
As far as the not touching grass at all, I've been digging much deeper into Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh, we said it right this time.
Yeah,
Nice.
well, I said it right last time too.
You did, yeah. But I think you had to like kind of stop.
Yeah, I got to be careful. I got to be
double
careful.
check yourself. Yeah.
But I'm over halfway done with the show. I'm really enjoying it, and it's so weird. I think anyone who enjoys the show, and I'm not pretending to know. I'm not like an OG fan or anything, so I'm not pretending to associate myself with like the fandom. But like, I'm guessing my feelings are probably what other people's feelings were who liked this show. It's not very direct as to what's likable about it. It's not very clear. It's not just like, oh, super fun characters and a plot that hooks you. It's really neither of those things. But it's so kind of archaic and like deep with like its themes and what the characters are going through and the existentialism, and it's very kind of depressing.
Yeah. And
I'm starting to really get a grasp of what makes it so special, and I'm really excited to return to it and finish it. To be honest, a lot of it has been me reading online to get a grasp of like what it's trying to do and the angles of things. Some of the stuff in the show's kind of screwed up.
Okay.
That it's kind of actually, it bothered me a little bit. I'm like, that's so screwed up, but I'm trying to like understand what it's going through. Cause basically, Neon Genesis Evangelion is the guy who created the series. It's basically him learning to deal with his own deep depression and dark thoughts through creating this anime, and it comes through. So it's a really, really awesome show, and I'm like still diving deep into that, and I'm excited to finish that up. And then besides that, I was so surprised, dude. Eric and I watched Godzilla -1. If you had asked me 2 days ago, actually, you could even ask me this now, but like, Bryan, do you give a shit about Godzilla? I'm like, no. Like, why would I care about God? I do not care about that IP. I don't care about the giant monster from under the water and trying to kill him and all that stuff. But everyone just kept talking about Godzilla -1. Why is this so special? Do you know why it's special? You haven't seen it, have you?
I haven't seen it, but I've been like, it's basically a return to form. It's a return to form for essentially what was like Japanese Godzilla with Godzilla 54 and stuff like that, all the way up to the 2000s in many ways. And I think a lot of people liked what was the one where Godzilla looked like he had a skin condition? Was it Shin Godzilla or something like that?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people like that, but it wasn't like as good as -1. And I think it's the time period as well, because this obviously goes back to pre-Godzilla 54, so it's just after World War II, and it's just reappropriating what makes Godzilla amazing. I think, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a film's film. It's like a real movie. It's not about God. I mean, it obviously is about Godzilla, but like they use him on screen like intermittently, and it's not always big monster stuff. And like it's shot so beautifully, and it's like grounded with the human characters. So it's really good, dude. And me and my wife enjoyed the heck out of it. It's on Netflix right now. It's a brand new movie, but you can just watch it with a Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
Super awesome. So yeah, between me playing like Stellar Blade and some other stuff we'll talk about when we get into what we're playing, and watching Neon Genesis and watching Godzilla, it's like and this segues me into my question that I'm going to drop on you, surprisingly. I've been going hard in the weeb paint. Very hard in the weeb paint.
Yeah. Anyone that's in the Critical Frames Discord would know.
I'm trying to morph into my full weeb form.
His final form.
And here's what I want you to do for me, Joe. So let's discuss here. The reason I'm bringing this up is so me and Joe have used the term weeb here and in the Discord. Some other podcasts and shows I listen to, they talk about weebs and like they'll address themselves as weebs because they like Kingdom Hearts and like all kinds of like Japanese content. Like, and guys, maybe I didn't realize how deep of a weeb I actually am, because I have had a kotatsu table in my living room for over a year, which is for those of you that don't know, it's a Japanese table that has a blanket coming out of it. and you sit under the table, and you put the blanket over you, and the table is heated. It heats like under the blanket. So it was brought up by our friend Wes in the Discord, who also runs our Twitter, that maybe you guys should tone it down on the weeb. Like maybe that's really offensive terminology. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you this question, but while I'm asking this question, you should Google search for me what is a weeb, and I want us to define what a weeb is. But I'm not offended when I'm called a weeb. I'm not offended I don't feel like I'm offending people when I call them a weeb. I know that it originally had some like worse connotations because it's like, oh, you're like, what I would guess the definition is like you're American, but you like deeply obsess yourself in like Asian culture, even though you're not from it at all. Yeah. What's it say, Joe? You got a smirk on your face.
It's just funny because like you read it and you just pick out the highlights, that's linked, and it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of like, depending on how you read this, it can be derogative. But according to Urban Dictionary, weeb, a weeb is a person who is interested in anime and Japanese culture. So not so bad there.
Okay.
It goes on to say, there is an important difference between a weeb and a weeaboo. The latter is a person who denounce their own culture, believe they are or want to become Japanese. They have a waifu or body pillow of some sort, and I think that's what to say, of some sort, and watch hentai. Weebs, though, are normal people who like anime and may have some merch. And that's according to Urban Dictionary.
I love it. Okay. So I'm definitely a weeb. Yeah. It sounds like weeb is just like a term for someone who likes like that, like some of the Asian culture, like movies and TVs and stuff like that. But the weeaboo, that sounds like what you don't want to be. Okay. Yeah. We're not judgmental here, but it sounds like, I mean, you said body pillows and anime pornography. So yeah, that's something different. So I guess I'll make yeah.
Guys, I'm scared he's going to lead to a question of, can you become my anime girlfriend and dress up as Big Titty?
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Like, I'll be like, Joe, look at this. I ordered a custom-made body pillow. It's you. I bring it into screen. Yeah.
You'll just see my video disappear.
So I'm going to go ahead and make the Critical Frames executive judgment. Weeb is fine. Weeb is okay. Is fine. Yeah. Weeaboo is not fine. But then the thing about weeaboo not being fine is then I still feel like I can use the term if my goal is to be negative, right? Because like, yeah. So like, it's not even that weeaboo is a term I can't use. It's just now that if I wanted to be negative on someone, which what's interesting, and they'll never listen to this because we're more acquaintances anymore. We don't talk anymore. Just out of life circumstance, nothing bad happened. But I have a friend that I went to middle school with, and he was like obsessed with like Asian culture and Asian women. And he ended up, when he got out of high school, he moved over to, I don't know I think it's Japan. Maybe it's Korea. I'm not sure. I don't pay that much attention to him. He moved over there and he married a woman over there and he teaches over there. And, he kind of falls into that probably weeaboo territory a little bit more. Like he kind of wanted to reject his culture to adopt that. So,
well, I mean, I don't mind that stuff. Like, people call like cultural appropriation and stuff with it, but at the end of the day, like if you're genuine about it and you're, and you just seem to fall into that category, whether it's like an identification thing or whatever, like that's dope. Like in many ways, like even though I'm British, I always kind of see, and my friends see this as well. They say like you're very American influenced, like the way you like think about things and how interested in games you are, and potentially even
it's because of Kojima
mannerisms and stuff. It's because of Kojima
because he's heavily influenced by the Western audience, and that's your favorite game. So he's helping you be more American. That's a really far stretch.
A Japanese person is helping a British man become more American. What
a beautiful thing. Honestly, there's some of a plot set up for another IP from him. That sounds like it could be pretty weird,
Yeah, that could be trippy. I forgot to say though on the last episode, like in terms of what I was doing, I recently watched Fellowship of the Ring with my dad.
Oh, okay. That's badass, dude. My favorite movie of all time. Yeah,
one of mine as well, top 5, and that film is just
gold.
It's amazing. It's platinum, baby. It's diamond. Like
it
honestly,
couldn't be. It's S+ tier.
It makes me smile from ear to ear. Like when it first. I mean, this is not like obviously the second time I've watched it, but it's like it's many a time. But every time I watch it, and you first see the Shire and the music's playing, it's like it's emotional. Just seeing it, like nothing's happening. It's just a slow pan across the hills, but it's fucking awesome. And
when Frodo is like riding with Gandalf as they come into the Shire, and And he's like, we hobbits nothing was ever thought bad of us or anything until you came around. And he's like, if you're referring to the dragon, I had nothing to do with it. It's like,
yeah,
okay, that's bullshit.
Never late.
Yeah. It is to me when you watch one of those Lord of the Rings films, you are peering into what the absolute peak of fantasy looks like.
Yes,
100%. Above everything.
Yeah. And the craziest thing is it was like the first to ever kind of do that in many ways, and it's still the peak. But yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the set design, the makeup, the costumes, the casting. To me, like Fellowship, there's like nothing wrong with that film.
I was about to say, what would you give it objectively? Is it a 10?
Like a 10. Like
that's what I give it.
Like it's such a perfect film. Like, and in many ways, Return of the King is. But it's mind blowing. Even like the Two Towers is like aside from pacing, the
Two Towers is it's the middle chapter. There's no beginning and end. So that's it.
Yeah. So it suffers a little bit from that syndrome. But yeah, it's phenomenal. I'll probably watch Godzilla -1 this weekend along with the Fellowship because I'm seeing my dad again. So like that'll be awesome to do.
You'll have to report back on it next week. We'll talk about Godzilla some more. Okay. I think that pretty much sums up what we've been doing for the week. We got some fun stories here. Are you ready to get into the PlayStation news, Joe?
Let's do it.
All right. This comes from the official Concord site through the PlayStation Store. I believe it's the Australian pricing. Concord pricing appears on Australian PS Store page. Same as Helldivers. So converted to American $40 for a Concord base and $60 if you want the digital deluxe. And I saw this and it made me so happy, Joe, because what's the thing that I hammered home when we talked about Concord on the last episode was, I think it looks good. I think, and we know that it's going to be a game that you have to purchase. It's not free to play. And I hammered over and over again how much I thought it was important that it not be $70. And Joe was kind of like, in a sense, you were like, I want it to be $70 in the sense that they deserve it. And I was also like, yeah, from that perspective, like, I'm sure the game deserves $70, but like for me, it was about the success of the game and where it could go if it's at $70 versus $40. And I think when you get into the $40 price, not only is Sony establishing this really great like perception among gamers of like, oh, your live service games are going to be cheaper when you get in the door, and people love Helldivers, so it's like, what comes next? I think when you get to that $40 price range, people are often just like, well, I'm getting this. It's like they feel like they're getting a discount on the game that just released. Yeah. And then even better with the $60 digital deluxe, a lot of people will go, well, I want to buy a new game. I'll just buy the digital deluxe because it's only $60. It's like a full price game. So I think it's a really smart pricing structure. And this led me on a train of thought that I'm just going to go through, and then I'll pass it all over to you, Joe, and see what you have to say. But it's been another week now, and we have heard more talk about Concord. I've listened to podcasts, watched videos, seen Twitter, seen forum posts, and I have to be honest, I have seen more negativity than I have seen positivity, which is really unfortunate. And most of the negativity is surrounding the fact that it's a game that we've seen before. It's a 5v5 PvP hero shooter. Overwatch has done that. Other games like Apex is a hero shooter. We've kind of talked through some of these before. And also, there's the Marvel Rivals coming, which was in the same showcase, which I don't think was a smart idea. I really still don't understand why Sony put that in there, compete against their own game. But I think the one thing that I would say to anyone who's involved with Concord, who's hearing the negativity, is like the most loudest negative thing I've heard is that they've seen a game like this before. And I know that that's not what you want to hear about your new game, but like, I don't hear people criticizing the gameplay or the graphics or the sound. I've heard a little bit of criticism against like the James Gunn humor, but I'm like, whatever. Yeah. So it looks like a high quality AAA game with great mechanics and a great style. I know a lot of people have said how much they love that kind of 70s looking style with like the Concord kind of logo and the name. Kind of reminds us of like the Commodore 64. So it feels to me that the criticism surrounding this game is less about the game being poor and more about it might not be what people thought they wanted or were asking for. And to be fair, it's possible it might not be what people want. We haven't seen it release yet. But where I'm at with this is I think it's a good second live service game to have along Helldivers 2. I think Helldivers 2 has proven to a lot of people that Sony can potentially have great live service games. And I think here's the crazy thing. Maybe a lot of people have talked about this and I've just completely not seen it. But what I'm about to say, I don't think is a profound thing at all. I think it's fairly obvious, but I don't see people talking about it. I think what sets Concord apart from so many other games like this is the masters of like Bungie, old school Bungie devs doing like Bungie first person shooting gameplay. Mm-hmm. And you see that evident in the gameplay trailer they shown. And what's a couple things we know about like Bungie style first person shooting is it's kind of renowned as like the best shooting mechanics in like the world. Destiny, that's one of the things that has always kept people, even when it like Destiny got shitty, it's like, well, I just can't put down this like silky smooth like gameplay. And then that brings me to kind of two other thoughts, which is like, what kind of gameplay have we seen in these hero shooters before? I really only have a lot of experience with Overwatch, and I think Overwatch is a very well built game, but like, I don't think it's crazy for me to say that the shooting of Overwatch doesn't feel as good as Destiny, as Bungie.
No.
So to see that being brought into a team shooter, and then the second thing I want to mention is one of the major criticisms about Destiny there's been a lot of criticisms about Destiny over the last 10 years, but one of them has been the PvP sucks. PvP sucks, right? So if Concord can have gameplay on the quality of like a Bungie shooter, which to me outclasses all the other hero shooters, and then they have PvP that's actually good, that people really want to invest their time in, rank up in, dedicate themselves to, where like Destiny wasn't offering that. Mm-hmm. And then combined with the fact that there's like equipment and stuff, and like the way the equipment in this game like stays on the map, that kind of reminds me of like a Halo Reach, like equipment type stuff and like Halo type stuff. So for me, I feel like it is a familiar offering, but with potentially higher class gameplay and the potential to be something really special in this field. And then it's also going to be like Sony branded PC day and date launch with the game. Dude, if you twisted my arm and asked me how I genuinely think this game will do, the negative is, and I don't think this is a negative, I think it's just hard to achieve. I don't think this will get anywhere close to the popularity of Helldivers 2. I don't think that. Helldivers 2 was an anomaly. It's not something you can expect. 12 million copies in like, what was it? I don't know, a couple months or less. I don't even know. But I think Concord will sell well enough. I think it will find its audience. I think it will grow. And I think it will be something that Sony is glad to have in their portfolio. I don't think this is going to drop off and have no players. And I think people will warm up to it once they get a chance to play it, right? Another thing about these hero shooters is so much of how much you care about it does depend on you playing it, because there is no lore set up with giant story cinematic trailer. It's how does it feel to play? And of course, everything I'm saying right now is coming from someone who hasn't even played the beta yet, who doesn't know what it plays like. So we could play the beta, we could see some major flaws and be like, oh no. But based on what we've seen so far with the art style, the first party backing, the old school Bungie devs bringing that kind of gameplay here, trying to get into that PvP space that Destiny never could. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be excited about if you get past people's initial reaction of like, oh, hero shooter. You know what I mean? So Joe, passing over to you, what are your thoughts on what I had to say? And then also, what do you think about the pricing? Do you feel good about it?
Yeah, I think you're bang on with what you say. And to just clarify, you were right. Just over 12 million copies sold for Helldivers 2, which is one of the fastest selling PlayStation games ever. Which is mind blowing and still to this day baffles me.
Spider-Man 2 hasn't hit that yet, and of course they're not the same. Spider-Man 2 costs more and it's bigger, but you know.
But I mean that's exactly why these companies are looking at live service, because you literally only need like one or two to hit out of the 3 or 4 that fails, getting to that point, and you've made all your money back. But I think like this is the thing, the pricing side of it, I get it. I'm always going to be the guy that says you need to pay for your games and you should support these developers. But I think from a business standpoint and looking at it logically, in many ways, like there was no way that this would have been $70, $70 USD, slash 60 British pounds. It's not going to happen because again, like you're coming at it from a new angle of a new franchise, a new IP. There's nothing riding on this, and you're also looking at from a studio that no one really knows. Obviously,
new studio,
ex-Bungie developers, but that doesn't mean anything to people. People that don't follow the news, people that don't follow the industry and learn about that stuff. It's not like that's just a footnote in kind of selling this game entirely. And I think it's the most logical thing to do. Like you said, people look at it from a discounted price point already, so it's kind of like, well, I might as well, drop some money once I get it on the microtransactions, or Call of Duty's $70 this year again for years in a row. Let's let's buy this instead. Let's try this out, and then this might become their new. And I think that's what they're trying to do. They're fitting into this side of the industry. And I said this when we was talking about the state of play last week. They're fitting into the side of the industry within PlayStation or within shooters in general that is kind of untapped right now, because the thing with Concord, from what I can tell and what I've read, is that it's not trying to be Overwatch in the sense that it's like objective based mainly. And the thing with Overwatch is you can carry your team, but oftentimes, like if your team isn't working together, your games get nowhere. It's as simple as that. It's kind of like taking more hints of like Valorant in that way, where you can carry a team if you're good at head tapping and killing enemies, and you're just individually better. But also, like you said, it has the feel and the style of what a Halo game would have in terms of its shooter elements. And I think that's really cool, because for me, that like personally, subjectively, that is combining all the best elements of what shooter games are right now, because I really like the objective style and the team play of Overwatch and how characters have a chemistry system to them. But I also like the fact that, like Valorant and Bungie games or Destiny, Halo, etc., are more like individual character skill ceilings. And like I said on the last podcast, again, to reiterate, Destiny 2 is in a really weird spot right now with like the final circle and slowly like sort of trickling out and getting to its end of its life cycle, ready for Marathon. The Crucible has always been a weird place when it comes to both appraisal and criticism, because people have like FOMO with that. If you miss out, you get behind on the content. And also there's a lot of balancing issues with Crucible. Like the Crucible has never been, from what I can tell, from the Destiny fan base, is that it's never been the main focus of Bungie with Destiny. Yeah. It's always been the raids and the new expansions PvE. And the PvE and the annual based content and stuff like that. And when I played it, it felt like that as well. The Crucible always felt like it lacked in content in many ways and just never moved and never changed and stuff and never pivoted when needed. So always a tertiary mode. So I think that Concord is filling a really nice gap right now. And like, with Overwatch 2 doing the same thing, where it's kind of like gone by the wayside a little bit, I think there's a gap in the market here. And especially considering this is the fact that it's backed by a really strong first party from a publisher standpoint and a platform standpoint. I think this is awesome because there is no studio or there is no platform, there is no company that like supports its first party, unlike PlayStation. Like they are neck and neck when it comes to Nintendo, and obviously Nintendo rarely do like live service titles. They have the Splatoon and stuff like that, but most of the time they're single player. So once it's out the door for Nintendo, it's an evergreen price point that continues. Whereas with like PlayStation, that's not the case, but they still perpetually support their studios regardless. So yeah, I think the pricing is understandable. I think the pricing is logical. But like, I'm excited for the game, but that's not what I kind of want to talk about here, Bryan. And I spoke about this with you last week when I kind of read more into the criticisms of what Concord was, and I was reading like just the general consensus on Twitter and especially YouTube comments, and then the dislike ratio on the trailer was unreal.
Yeah.
I've never seen such a I think the last time we saw something like that, in all honesty, of such wave was when Call of Duty Infinite Warfare's trailer came out, and everyone was just like, that is trash, and it was just this bandwagon of hate in many ways. And this isn't to the same scale because it's not on the level of Call of Duty in terms of popularity, but holy shit, was I disappointed in what people were saying in the comments and in the general discourse on social media feeds, because like, this game is like, this is the thing. This game is coming out regardless of what anyone who doesn't like the game thinks. It's at the point now where it's in its final push, and the only thing that your dislikes and your comments are going to do is like just how do I say this? Like negatively impact the developers on the assembly line and nothing more. Because, like I said, the game's got to come out at this point to make the money back. And as someone who does this kind of stuff in terms of like web development and web design and knows what it's like to work on a project for so long on an assembly line, it bothers me to see the fact that the only thing that your criticisms are going or getting to is those developers. And it's such a shame that that's the case, because like if I was to develop a website for so long, over a course of a month or two, and I'm doing one right now, and then the people came back with, oh well, it's just like this generic hero shooter that we've seen hundreds of times, it genuinely pisses me off, because like that is such a reductive take on everything you're seeing here, from like clips of gameplay and just general like comedy vibes, like you said with the James Gunn style and the sort of cartoony vibe that the art style has and stuff like that. And I just felt like that is such a reductive crap way of kind of like going into things open-minded. I'm not saying you should never critique, and you should always be like, how would I say, like a very avid skeptic in many ways. But ultimately, like it's sad that people aren't even letting it get out the door to criticize it. And it's almost like it's guilty until proven innocent in this regard.
And what's so shocking to me, going off what you're saying, is that there's actually no merit to the level of distaste or the cruelty. Because to be fair, now I don't think, I mean, if we're gonna, how do I put this? We're all guilty of being harsher on things than we should be. So am I. I don't think it's ever, even if a game is being shitty to its consumers, I don't know if that ever necessarily means it's okay for you to be shitty to someone.
Yeah.
Well, if we're speaking from the angle of morality, but a lot of games have earned their criticism.
Yes.
I think of Cyberpunk's launch. That game shouldn't have been released.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair to consumers. They had every right to be that upset. You know what I mean? Or like our Halo the Master Chief Collection came out, you couldn't play it online. Or a game where it's like, I don't know, they released the game, but they obviously gate off content that you can't have.
Yeah.
Like there hasn't been anything that this game has objectively done wrong to warrant. It's fair for people to be not interested or say,
100%.
I'm sick of seeing these things. I mean, I'm not criticizing. If people say like, oh, seen a hero shooter before, I don't care about it, that's fine. I'm not accusing you of anything. But like to act like the game has done something wrong, it just hasn't. Yeah. And that's what's so obscure to me, because plenty of games do lots of things that are unfair or are wrong. And I think it's fair to criticize them, but like that's not the case here. So the TLDR is like, show your disinterest if you want. Like say this isn't the kind of game I was wanting to play, or I'm not interested in it. I don't think there's anything wrong in that, but like it's being torn to shreds by people. But I don't see the motive. Like, or like if we knew that Concord like employed child labor to have it done, then I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, rip it a new ass. You know what I mean? Like, but there is nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah. And I also think like the internet always brings out the worst in people, and they have no like concept of like the shit sandwich. Like when I watched that trailer, it's like when I watched the trailer at State of Play, it was like, okay, in-engine graphics are great. Then there was a drop in graphics from the in-engine rendered stuff, and I was like, fine, that makes sense. Like it's gonna happen. Then it was the shooting actually looks really cool. And then I was like in my brain, I was like, it's kind of like a hero shooter. Like, I mean, we've seen that, but like, okay, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to see if it's cool. And then again, you see more of the shooting, you see more of the gameplay, and it's like, okay, that's good. But there wasn't like, there was no part of me that wanted to critique that game. There was elements of that game that was like, okay, well, it's not the most original in terms of what it's trying to do, but it's like a really solid game that I think can potentially fill a gap in the market from, like I've said previously, high skill ceiling in terms of individual play within a team environment, combining it with the sort of teamwork style of Overwatch, and also like Valorant and the gunplay of Halo with the equipment and all that stuff. And and also with that the narrative that evolves outside of those matches. I genuinely thought that it was a really cool thing. But the way I always go about this stuff is I try and it's called the shit sandwich. You put something great about something. You do it in the working environment when you critique someone, when you do like say a performance review or something. It's something great followed by something shit followed by something great. And it just allows people to process that better, and it doesn't come across like you're bagging on people. And there was none of that online. And I mean, it's almost like, well, Joe, like, why do you expect that to happen? It's online. What do you expect? But it's like, I mean, come on, guys. Like, why can't we just be better? I know that's like a really ignorant thing to say about like sort of an anonymity online.
Yeah,
but it makes me so disappointed.
That's the thing, is there's no consequence, right? Because we know how this works. There might be 1,000 people who are talking shit about this game who play the beta or play the full release and like it, and then they just, once they like it, they just go on. They're like, I'm having a blast in Concord, and no one holds them responsible because you don't know, right? And I think, and like I said, we're just as like fallible of being like dickheads online sometimes, but like I'll give you two perfect examples. I never once had any interest in Helldivers 2. I never once dogged on it. I mean, my other podcast, I had podcasted many times talking about it, talked with Joe about it. Never said anything bad about Helldivers 2. Never had any interest in it. The game came out. I still don't have any interest in it. I still haven't played it. But the game was a huge success. So I don't have to sit here and go, oh, well, I kind of shit all over that game, but it actually was good. Because I don't act that way. Another example was whenever Stellar Blade showed up in a PlayStation showcase, I'm like, I don't give a shit about this game that's got like it seems like they're just marketing some hot chick with like the jiggle physics, and I'm like, well, I don't care about that. Like, that's not a game to me. I don't give, I don't care about it. But like, I never criticized it. I never said this game's stupid or they shouldn't be doing this or who wants this. And then I ended up playing it and loved it and bought it. So I think it morally, I guess, and just like maturely, it's like be reserved and then wait and see. But once again, I would be much more on board with like dogpiling a game if it actually did something wrong, like
100%.
But it just hasn't. Like, its biggest sin is that you've seen something like it before. So that's all I have to say, really.
I think the thing I just want to like people to take away from this, like if you're listening and maybe you have been one that is like, this game looks shit, just throw it in the bin, is like just seriously like try and be more nuanced with everything you do in life, because it just like, as someone who used to be this reactionary and this kind of like black and white about things, like it honestly serves you worse as an individual, not even just speaking about other people here. It serves you worse as an individual for going through life with an open mindset and being understanding and being able to appreciate, again, the nuance in everything based on your mindset. Like, your mindset is everything in life. And if you can't stop to smell the roses every so often in regards to anything, you oftentimes close your heart to so many different things. And then by design, you can fall into the pitfalls of upsetting a lot of people that you don't truly realize you're upsetting. And again, like Bryan says, we're all fallible of doing this stuff and like just kind of dismissing things. But like, I don't know, maybe we should all just be better, in the words of like Kratos in many ways. Like, it's so important because you don't know who you're affecting. And I can imagine that the people at Firewalk right now, or when they heard all that reaction and they saw it all, was really down and out, and really upset. And I hope they like obviously push through it and they raise the morale in the team, because they truly needed it. But and they deserve it because they've worked hard and this is their first game, and it looks like a really stellar first attempt at what they're trying to do. And it looks, ultimately, like it's a video game. Ultimately, it looks fun, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and like I said, I think anybody who's online saying that they're not interested or they're tired of seeing these kind of games, I don't think that's mean. I think that's fair. I think that's totally fine. But I've seen people who are just like, Sony should cancel the game. And it's like, bro, why would you even say that? Like, that doesn't even. First of all, how does it affect you? And why would you say something so dismissive like that? And Joe, when you speak of like nuance and stuff, I'm like, I think for anyone who knows kind of where I come from, like, when Josh and I were doing the Sacred Icon podcast and doing the Halo stuff specifically, we got such a following because of our takes on Halo, because it was very nuanced and leaning positive. And that we never like lied about stuff, but it was like, for instance, like, for anyone who knows that series, like Halo 5 is a game that people like really hate. And we would be like, man, that one mission of Halo 5 was really cool. And you get a lot of people who were like, oh, that game's dog shit. It's like,
yeah,
I understand you didn't like the thing. Like sometimes when people don't like something, they want to go extreme and encompass the entire thing and drag it down with an anchor.
It's almost to serve their own narrative.
Yeah, like it would not help
their
them.
Point. Yeah.
Because like if someone sees Concord and they're like, oh, it's a 5v5 hero shooter, it's multiplayer, I'm not interested. It would not behoove them to say, wow, the game has really cool looking characters.
Yeah.
Because that extends any kind of olive branch at all to the game that they don't want to play. And they think that that's bad, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think at this point for myself, I'm probably just going in circles. But yeah, I think we've definitely proven our point on that. But
yeah, definitely.
If you have any more to say, Joe, don't let me cut you off.
No, at all. We can move on.
Yeah, for as far as the like deluxe edition goes, if you pay $60, you get to play the game 3 days early. Speaking of valid criticism, I freaking hate that. I hate I hate when games ask you to pay to play 3 days early. I am of the opinion that they're not giving you 3 days early access. They are withholding
the game from
playability from everyone else that didn't pony up extra money. So I this isn't a Concord specific thing, but I think that behavior.
Starfield did it. So
yeah, it's bullshit in my opinion. But you get the 16 character skins and the Monarch pack. I'm not sure what the Monarch pack is, but if it's with this game being compared to Overwatch, character skins are very important to people usually who get into these kind of games. So 16 character skins, you get to play it early. Monarch pack, but yeah, very cool. We're still interested to see more of Concord and play that beta. Okay, actually, Joe, I think let's just go ahead and pan over to our Destiny 2 story next, since we were talking about Destiny already. They kind of tie in together. This comes from GameSpot. Destiny 2 servers are still struggling after the Final Shape launch. It says, this is by Haley Williams. Destiny 2 launched the Final Shape expansion this week as the finale to its sweeping Light and Darkness saga, but the launch has been plagued by server issues and error codes in its first day of release. While some issues have now been solved, players still are reporting issues with accessing the new content. Some players have reported disruptions as they try to play through the story content, having trouble loading into missions, or being removed from a mission just before the final cutscene played, while others haven't been able to load into the game at all. Bungie issued an apology for the connection issues from Destiny on Twitter, Destiny's Twitter account, and spoke candidly about the troubleshooting process, providing a timeline of bugs it has already been able to resolve. So rather than reading through what they've resolved already and what's to come, this just like a couple things. Like, I guess where my thoughts are on this is it kind of takes me back to something we read on another podcast at some other time where Bungie was not doing too hot with Destiny 2. And for those of you that don't know, the arrangement when Sony purchased Bungie was that Bungie could maintain their independence and make their own decisions and even put their games on other platforms and not have to go through Sony, even though they're owned by Sony. But the conditions were that they were bringing in a certain amount of profit and they were having a certain amount of success. And if that success or that profit fell too low for too long, the agreement would be that then Sony gets to take majority of the board, effectively making Sony in control of Bungie. Because if you're like me, you might ask yourself, you're like, how does someone acquire something but then give them independence? That doesn't seem to make sense to me. It's you put a stipulation in, and that's what's here as a stipulation. And I don't know if this is like factual or it was just kind of speculation earlier in the year, but what I had been hearing was that largely the success of Destiny 2's Final Shape expansion in the summer was going to be dependent on whether they got to maintain their independence or if Sony was going to sweep in. And it seemed that Destiny 2 needed to really pull some big numbers. And to be fair, I don't really follow Destiny very closely, but it doesn't seem like the hype that I've seen for other expansions like Forsaken or the Witch Queen. I know people are excited for this, no doubt. But couple that with the launch of this game and how it's not doing too great. And it just kind of makes me concerned for Bungie and what they will become. I'm not saying they could become better, honestly, under Sony. I think that's just as possible as they become worse, honestly. But it's concerning to see what the future of Bungie will be like, because I'm guessing that that's what this will lead to. I don't see Destiny, like I don't see things of like, I don't see headlines like, oh, Destiny player numbers are off the charts and fans are back in droves, and I don't see that, and we're having these launch problems. And this is another speculative thing kind of on my part, but I was on GameSpot and I saw they had a video. I did not watch it, but the video was like, it said, the video title was like how Destiny barely made it 10 years was like the title of the video. I've not watched it, but I would wager that they would say something similar to what I'm thinking based off their title, which is, you look at all the trials and tribulations Destiny has went through since its launch to now, and it is kind of crazy how it lasted 10 years. Like, it feels like it really at no point it was smooth sailing. Maybe one expansion or two in a row, it would kind of go smooth for a while, but it was always like, it launched poor, it got delayed a year. It was supposed to be launched in 2013, got launched in 2014. It launched poor. There wasn't enough content. The story sucked. It finally got like fixed up a bit with Taken King and the first Destiny. And then eventually it was like, okay, we're going to try this again with Destiny 2. And then Destiny 2 started off pretty strong.
Yeah, very strong.
And then it had dips, and then it came even stronger. It came back again with further expansions. And then it kind of had a big dip again with the expansion before this. And here we are arriving at the end. And it's just like, I don't know. I've never really been into Destiny. Obviously Halo is one of my favorite franchises ever. Some of the best games I've ever played. Bungie made those games. But since Bungie left Halo and Xbox and Microsoft behind, a lot of their big talent that we know either left or got fired. They went deep into this, live service online shooter Destiny 2 with a collaboration with publisher Activision. And it, even though they've maintained their like level of like, when it comes to fidelity and like mechanics, they've maintained their quality. Like, it's the highest quality of like first person shooting there is. And a lot of people love Destiny, and it's garnered a huge fan base. It just feels like the entirety of Destiny's life has been very tumultuous. They didn't even want Destiny 2 to be Destiny 2. They just wanted it to be Destiny, That's why when people ask for a Destiny 3 for so long, they're just like, there is no Destiny 3. It's just Destiny. The 2 was a part of, the 2 was a part of like the agreements they had made with Activision. And it's funny because if you looked at there was like a leaked court documents for Destiny way back in the day, which it was basically, the deal was that they would be with Activision for 10 years and there'd be 3 Destiny games and a bunch of expansions between each game. And it ended up, the expansions came out that took longer to come out. They scrapped a possible Destiny 3, and then they paid their way out of Activision. And then they were free for a while, and then they went back in with Sony. So I'm really interested to see what Destiny looks like as a company 5+ years from now, probably being ran by Sony and having Destiny behind them. I said a lot there, Joe. What are your thoughts on Destiny and Bungie?
Yeah, my history with Destiny is I played the first one, enjoyed it, but I felt like it was weird because when I played Destiny, I felt like I was the only person in my circle of friends, I guess because the generation, they didn't play Halo and stuff, but I was like, it's more like Bungie, it's more Bungie shooting, it's like more polished from Bungie, it's clearly like upgraded in terms of the engine and the way it looks and feels, but ultimately, like, this is basically, every time I play Destiny, I feel like I'm playing a shit version of Halo.
Yeah,
and
same.
I'm like, that sounds like, that sounds really reductive. We've just come off the Concord conversation.
Yeah.
But like, I just couldn't look at it any other way. And every time I played Destiny 1, and same with 2 in many ways, I was like, I don't like, I literally went back. Like, I played Destiny 1, I played Destiny 2 on the PC. So I played Destiny 1 on the Xbox One, then I played Destiny 2 at launch on the PC, and then I downloaded it like on the, and you have like cross-play, don't they, or cross-save or whatever, cross-account progression,
cross-platform
progression. And I went on the PS5 because it was free or it was included on my PS Plus thing, like, and I was like, okay, I'll try it out, like, screw it, I'll dick around in Destiny 2. I loaded up, I spawned into this like snowy area, this snowy planet for whatever reason. I can't remember what I was doing. I don't know if it was like a raid or like just going around the free roam areas that they have. Excuse me. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand what's going on. There's massive FOMO here. not that I have a fear of missing out, but I am literally missing out. And I remember shooting I can't remember what the main enemies of the game were, like the darkness or whatever. Do you know what they're called, Bryan? Like they're from the original Destiny.
You mean the darkness?
Yeah, but there's like a name for like the captains and the grunts and stuff.
The Fallen and the.
It might
Are you
be. I
talking about the
don't
different
know.
alien races?
Yeah, the original alien races that they like showed off.
Yeah, there was the
stuff,
Fallen,
yeah.
there was the Hive, there was the Cabal, and there was the Vex.
I think it's the Fallen. I think I'm talking about like the skinny ones, and yeah, and they're just like standing there shooting me, just like, pew, 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 pew. And they're not like taking any cover. They're not like moving around like Halo enemies were. And I know this is a different game and stuff. I 100% understand that, so I don't expect this to all be Halo. But I literally booted it all for an hour, ran around shooting a couple of enemies, and I was like, I already remember why I don't like playing this game. Like, because from a fundamental level, like pretty much every system within Destiny, aside from like the live servicey elements of it, is like a regression in terms of what Bungie learned with Halo. Like the navigational meshes of the AI was poor. The navigation, the hierarchical structures of, like from the captains to the lower grunts, poor. And I was just like, this is kind of whack. And then, like you said, to combine it with all this like objective stance, like this objective, like actual flaws of the game, which are like obviously server issues, like we're seeing here, the Crucible going out of whack for a lot of people, and then also like I mean the idea of them signing up with Activision after leaving Microsoft because of like creative disputes and not wanting to be tied to Microsoft anymore after Halo Reach. They were done, and they obviously had to do Halo Reach because they really wanted out after Halo 3. Like why? And then to then go under Sony immediately after, which is so ironic considering again the history with Microsoft. And then then Sony going, oh well, we trust Bungie out of like obviously of all people to like herald and sort of shepherd our live service at like studios. And they came in to Naughty Dog before they cancelled Factions and was like, this isn't up to snuff. Like this quality of game. Obviously, we don't know the details at all because it was just like, oh yeah, they're canceling Factions. For them to come in and be like and talk down to Naughty Dog in many ways and say this isn't going to work is wild to me, because the history of Destiny in general, while is great for the most part, is not the most perfectly smooth running live service game ever. And in many ways, what is? You look at Final Fantasy XIV, it failed originally, and then they had to reboot it with a Realm Reborn under new management and under new creative lead. Like Halo Infinite is a prime example of like the live service elements not like going to like being up to scratch.
Pretty much Fortnite's pretty much the only one that's like always been consistent.
Yeah. Fortnite, PUBG falling by the wayside massively because Fortnite just ate its lunch essentially. Like there's very few examples of live service games like doing very well across the board, but Destiny in many ways is one of the worst of the packs for that reason. And I mean, one of the biggest things that divided the community massively with Destiny 2 was when they vaulted the campaign.
That to me, when they did that, and this isn't like me being hyperbolic or anything like that, when they did that moment, I said, I'll never play Destiny again because I actually really enjoyed Destiny 2's main campaign.
Dude, the campaign was actually good.
Yeah, and I paid for it. Wasn't it called like the Red War campaign or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And I paid for it, and there's no way to access it anymore. And if you want to play these new expansions, there's no way to catch yourself up unless you just want to watch YouTube videos. So I was just done for forever for then. But
yeah.
I mean,
and then to like kind of make you pay for every other expansion, even though you're paying for like annual passes and stuff. It's like, come on, guys. Like this is kind of getting a bit ridiculous now, and the fact that you're like vaulting, like the vaulting content for me was, I mean, I was gone before that. I'll be honest with Destiny 2. Like I was gone way before.
I might have came back though if it wasn't. For
the
vaulting.
Yeah, 100%. But like it did feel like a kick in the balls in many ways. And the thing that gets me worried about like Destiny 2 in general is that if they can't manage server launches for a like by the numbers live service title like Destiny 2. What chance do they have for like holding and maintaining a server farm for Marathon, because like if people don't know, like I don't know how Marathon's going to be structured in terms of items and gear sets, but like let's take Escape from Tarkov as an example. I'm a prolific Escape from Tarkov player, or at least I used to be. I don't have as much time anymore, but I know that game inside and out, or I did know that game inside and out at the time I played it. And that game always, every time it wiped the progressions for a new big update, so players had to restart everything they've done. Every time it wiped with Twitch drops and everything, the servers would crash. And the amount of server space and the infrastructure that you need, because the way extraction shooters work, where every player has like a stash of items that is like procedural and also not like deletable and it doesn't perish. You got to keep all that data on server farms while also maintaining like the actual server population and like the technical side of keeping it online. And like knowing what I know with like Escape from Tarkov constantly having problems with their servers, I mean, it obviously the jury's still out whether it's going to happen with Marathon, but like the idea that like this launch is having server problems already, even though they are years into Destiny 2 and they should have had this sorted by now, just like Battlestate should have had with Escape from Tarkov. It doesn't make me confident for the launch of Marathon, where you are dealing with so many different things tied to player accounts and player gear sets and stuff like that, that I just worry. I seriously worry, not necessarily for my own sake, because I don't know necessarily if I'm going to play Marathon. I probably will try it out, but I just worry that like they're going to repeat the mistakes of what Battlestate have done with Escape from Tarkov. So yeah.
Hasn't there been some conversation around, like, I don't know how much of this is true or it's hearsay, but I feel like Bungie moved a bunch of people, prominent people, to Marathon, and there's been a conversation for the last year-ish of like Bungie's kind of like put Destiny 2 on the back burner as like not their main focus, and they haven't been as heads down invested in it as they have in the prior, potentially because they're interested in doing something new. I mean, look at Bungie. They were always the company that didn't want to do the same thing forever. And Destiny at this point, they've effectively, when you consider development, Destiny they've been working on as long as Halo, if not longer, if you consider development time. So maybe they're just, they're, in a sense, their passion's kind of not there, even though it is their cash cow. It is their main breadwinner.
Yeah.
There's always the possibility that like Marathon could come out and be spectacular and like the whole team's committed to Marathon and it's a different experience to Destiny, but it very much feels like Destiny is like something they want to move on from. And that's one of the things I've always like not liked about, MMOs essentially, is they're structured in such a way that if you don't continue to add, like to dangle the carrot out further, there's no reason for people to, like, people don't want to play it.
Yes.
So like the Destiny 2 numbers were way down after the last expansion, which to be fair was a poor expansion is what people say. But like, obviously they're going to a lot of people will come back for the final shape. But if there's not another expansion after this one, what does the population of Destiny 2 look like in a year or 2 or 3 from now? If they don't, like, let's say this is it, and I don't know for sure if it is, but if this is it for Destiny 2, I would think that the numbers and the income from Destiny would be extremely low, because we've already seen it low between expansions. But like,
yes,
the reason people play Destiny 2 is to continue to chase that carrot that's dangled, and without it, I don't know. It just seems like I would wager that it would be silly for me to say Destiny 2 isn't a huge success in the sense of its staying power and the great things that it's done, the fandom, the money. But it really seems like they were playing with fire for the whole 10 years. And I hope whatever they do next, which, I mean, it seems that what they're doing next is Marathon.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're able to cultivate that and run that more consistently. It is interesting how, like, it's easy to say things with hindsight being 2020, but like, it's interesting that Sony bought them for like their supreme knowledge in live service. And I think it makes sense, because if you were to make a short list of the people that have the best knowledge of live service in the industry, I'm sure Bungie would be on there, but it doesn't seem clear that they were the first choice or the second choice or maybe even the third. I mean, obviously Sony wasn't gonna be able to buy Fortnite or Epic,
no way.
But it doesn't seem like it was as surefire of a bet as maybe they thought it was. Like,
yeah,
like you said with like the Naughty Dog thing. When I heard the Naughty Dog like Last of Us multiplayer game live service game was canceled, I mostly felt good about that, because I'm like, oh, for once, a company got ahead of a problem and cut it off. This is how I felt. But now it makes me wonder, if Last of Us was really well, like if the Last of Us online game was really well developed, and it came out at like a $40 price point, let's be fair, because it's Naughty Dog, it'd probably be 70. But if it could come out at a good price point and it offered fun online, it might have done really well. I mean, like if we're seeing Helldivers 2 hold this level, like Factions could have done that. So and from what we heard is like Bungie were the ones to kind of nip that out.
And
so
yeah,
I don't
and
know.
I think that's really, it's weird because it's a dangerous thing to do, right? Because you're asking creatives to critique other creatives, and everything whenever you ask, well, assumingly so, it was creatives, because again, you don't have like, it was Bungie upper management, but we don't have like names and we don't have like concrete evidence in terms of who went in and like critiqued this product. But it's one of those things where it's like you're asking a creative that rules their day, their job title, their description, their passion is ruled by subjective take, which is the part of that is the point of art. You know, programmers, artists, level designers, like it's all art, and you're asking an artist. It's like you're asking Picasso to critique Van Gogh. Like, yes, obviously he has like a point of reference greater than I or you, Bryan, but you're also asking another person to critique art that is not pertaining to that artist.
Yeah.
And I think you walk a very dangerous path if you do that, because maybe Destiny 2's development, like upper devs, didn't truly understand what Naughty Dog's game was when it came to their live service style, and maybe they didn't fully grasp the whole picture. And with like Jim Ryan's over reliance on Bungie, because like Jim Ryan would have looked at Bungie as like this herald success, because like again, at its core, Bungie now is a live service, you know, company that makes live service titles, and he wanted to do that. He was obsessed with live service, and that's fine. Like that, he was a good businessman for that. But I also think like maybe his opinion was potentially like skewered too much towards that live service. That like he can't see the wood for the leaves in this situation. And you were right. Like the PvP team of Destiny has left for Marathon. So that is one of the reasons why like the Crucible has died down massively, because there's not many people working on it. It's on life support at this point.
Yeah.
And just in general, like leadership has changed in Marathon. Marathon is potentially coming out in 2025, apparently. And it's at this point where, like, do we trust Bungie to be able to get Marathon over the finish line with all the factors that we've just discussed? And I don't necessarily know if I do, because, and this is another thing, we need to stop looking at studios through rose-tinted glasses the same way we should stop looking at places like IGN as collective opinions, in the sense that, like, Bungie is not Joe Staten anymore. You know,
no, it's not even close.
It's, you know, it's not Sketch, it's not Max Hoberman, you know, all that stuff. And it's like we are way past those days of these like childhood heroes making games for us out of passion in a lightning in a bottle scenario. And it's a shame that people can't get their head around it. And it was the same thing that happened with Anthem, where like people were like, "Oh yeah, it's BioWare. Wow, like they've done all these games, you know, and I can't wait for it." And it's like, you need to stop looking at these companies like they're the same people as 10 years ago. It's not the case. People move on, and even I fall into that trap. You know, I look at Kojima Productions like it's some amazing studio, which it is currently. But if Kojima was to leave, or various leadership on the team, even if Kojima was there, I'd start to question the art style, the gameplay, directing, etc.
Imagine if you were still excited for new Konami game releases after Kojima left, and like, Konami games are always good. I'd be like, Joe, like, bro, come on.
Yeah, 100%. And so you know, same with Santa Monica Studio. It's like when Eric Williams came in to direct God of War Ragnarok, I remember like going, I don't know about him, because he's never been in like a massive leadership role up until that point. But guess what? He did an amazing job, in my opinion. So yeah, it's hard to critique it. We'll have to see when it comes to Marathon. But like for the launch of what Destiny 2's like final shape is such a crap name. Also, I don't like that as a title.
I don't either, because it's funny because there was a guy that I worked with, an old guy who, when he sat, this is crude. I'm just giving you guys a little.
Oh god, here we go.
There's an old guy that when he sat, you know, a lot of times old guys, their junk gets really like big and saggy.
Yeah.
And he would sit down, and you would just see the bulge fill up with his excess junk. And we always called it his shape at work.
Wow.
So when I first saw Destiny 2, the final shape, I just pictured like the final nutsack is what I was picturing. So I don't like the name, but yeah, no, I mean, look at it this way. It's obvious that Sony underestimated the success of Helldivers 2, like underestimated what that game would be. And I'm not criticizing them for that. I mean, I think we all did. But if Sony can make that mistake to some degree, then Destiny or Bungie can definitely make that mistake when they look at Naughty Dog's game and say, yeah, we can't release this. So yeah.
It's a shame we never got to even see any form of gameplay or anything to it, because maybe like it would have been cool to see like a teaser for the Last of Us factions. And then potentially allowed Bungie to sit on that. Like if it was positive feedback, like hypothetically from all of us, like as gamers, as the industry, I wonder if, despite their opinions on certain elements of what potentially wouldn't have made a good live service game by their standard, they would have still gone, okay, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt because a lot of people here are actually liking what they see. And I think in many ways, like, it's weird because like, yes, maybe like, I think maybe we're living in a better timeline simply because obviously like now we potentially get a Last of Us 3 sooner.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, it's sad that we just never got to see that as something that we could potentially share out, like gauge fan excitement or gamer excitement.
You know what's confusing to me? This is not an original idea for me at all. But once I heard it, I was like, yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm sure. Well, even though we don't want to necessarily, we will probably end up citing him a lot over the years or over the time we're doing this podcast. But Colin from Sacred Symbols, he said, well, what happened to when we just launched like multiplayer games and then they were just multiplayer and you just played them and they were highly populated because they were good. Yes. And I remember like Last of Us, the original Last of Us on PS3, it had a successful factions multiplayer. And I'm like, would it have been because I know one of the conversations about Naughty Dog doing the factions live service game was like, oh, could we still do our high quality single player games if we have to keep up with this live service? But it's like, but do you have to keep up with the live service? Couldn't you have just launched an amazing factions multiplayer game like the one that came with Last of Us 1, maybe a little bit bigger scale, and make it a game that you purchase? Yeah. And then maybe include some options in there like, oh yeah, you can buy a new backpack for this character you can, and like, I understand, like, I'm not going to try to be like an ignorant consumer and say like, oh yeah, you can just have one guy sitting on a computer in the corner and he can run the shop for the live service factions game. Yeah. I know it's not that simple, but like, don't make it as ambitious as Fortnite. And the only reason that like Fortnite works is because it has so much money that they have so many devs constantly producing content around the clock forever, like multiple studios worth of people. So I would have liked to see factions as just a multiplayer thing that people could have enjoyed, and it could have been popular because people enjoyed it. Now, for all we know, maybe it inherently at its roots had this like deep live service design where it only would have worked if they had a full team on it around the clock. And if that's the case, maybe it is going to got canceled. But yeah.
I think in reference to that, not to go on too long because we've been on this a long time, but I think the game has changed. I really do. Like in response to what Colin said, I think that we're at a point where if you come out with a non-live service multiplayer title and you explicitly say that, like, this is a one and done thing, we're going to move on to the single player stuff, I think a lot of people, including us and like Colin and stuff, would really appreciate that 100%. But I also think a lot of people are going to look at that in the industry that we have now, and they are going to go, what?
They're going to say, what's the point? Which sucks so much because the point is playing a fun game.
Yeah, because they have been conditioned. People have been conditioned to be that way now, including me, and and I would fight against that conditioning as best I could. But there would be a side of me, like if that was like a topic of conversation, say like this obviously went in a different timeline and that is what happened, I would have brought it up on the podcast and said, well, like this is probably going to go against them negatively depending on how well the initial sales are, So yeah. But it's a shame. Like I said, it's a shame that this server problems are happening because it's about time this stuff doesn't happen in the industry nowadays. And the most ironic thing about this comes from Bungie, a team that literally heralded console multiplayer like service online functionality with Halo 2 and Max Hoberman, and now this is happening now. So yeah.
That's crazy how much we got out of those first 2 stories, Joe. We really got a lot out of those.
Yep.
Over to Kotaku, we have long rumored Final Fantasy IX remake is very far along, according to latest leaks. Reliable leaker Midori is back with some new information, but this time it isn't about the Persona series. Midori, who has a track record of revealing announcements like the Persona 3 Reload's episode Aegis, has an update on the long rumored remake of Final Fantasy IX. According to the leaker, the project is now very far along in development, and fans can expect to hear official news on the project relatively soon. Midori begins her thread on the remake by assuring that the project is still in development and was not canceled as a part of the latest round of restructuring and layoffs that occurred in May. It's alleged at one point that the FF9 remake was being outsourced for development, but Square Enix was not happy with the results and took development internally. However, even with that change in the development studio, the project is now far enough along that Midori believes that it will be released in 2025. And then scrolling down a bit here, I thought this was maybe interesting to mention as well. As for when we might see the FF9 remake in an official capacity, Midori is quick to say that she isn't 100% sure, but it could be soon, as soon as this month. She alleges that Square Enix will appear in some capacity during the upcoming Xbox showcase, during which it is possible that the FF9 remake will make its grand debut. So we've known about the existence of this game for a while because there was a NVIDIA leak that came out a few years ago. And
oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
What's been rumored about the Final Fantasy IX remake, and I think it's all but true, or all but confirmed to be true, is that this is something more ambitious than a remaster, but it is not even remotely close to the Final Fantasy VII remake. This is something where we're probably going to see new visuals, maybe new menus, maybe some mechanics reworked, but it's a remake, but it's not anywhere to the scale of Final Fantasy VII remake. But nonetheless, it's something people are very excited for. It appears that it's not going to be just on Sony's platform. They probably don't have the kind of contractual deal like they do with Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's not as important to them as that was. It's probably going to be on multiple platforms, and a lot of people are thinking maybe this will show up actually at the Xbox showcase to kind of spotlight how the relationship between Xbox and Square has been repaired. But I mean, I think it's pretty much a fact this is coming. How soon, we don't know. Will we see it here soon? I'm not sure. 9 is a game I've played but not got very far in. I would obviously buy this day one. I would love to play through a remake of Final Fantasy IX. It's one of the most beloved games in the series. Joe, do you think these leaks are accurate? And would you have any interest? I'm going to lean towards no, but I don't know. Maybe you would. How do you feel about this?
I mean, we recently did a Critical Frames Plus episode. If you guys want to check out Patreon for that, patreon.com/Critical Frames.
$5 a month. Yeah, you get a full extra episode. We just covered Final Fantasy VII Remake on there, and then you get a bunch of Discord benefits, ask a question, and have your name shouted out at the end of the show. So
yeah, good plug, Bryan. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because obviously we did the episode, but obviously I went back and kind of went back. I mean, technically I played it retrospectively because I didn't play it on release, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I enjoyed my time with that, even though like it's quite a harsh series to get into as a newcomer, considering it is an anthology series. And from what I could tell, from what Wes has told me in the Discord and what you've told me, I mean, like, this is very much the Final Fantasy IX was kind of a return to the pixel era of Final Fantasy. Is that correct?
No, not return to the pixel era. Basically, Final Fantasy was always like high fantasy, like swords and shields and medieval, all the way through 5, and then 6 got a little steampunky, and then 7, as you know, 7's kind of cyberpunky, and then 8 was like another variation of like futuristic. So 9 was supposed to be the last of the traditional Final Fantasies, and they brought it back to actual like medieval stuff before they went into 10, which 10 was like all like Pacific Island kind of bright colors, a whole different deal. So
100%. So yeah, I mean, like, so the reason I'm saying that is because like this does somewhat interest me, just simply because, and like you just said, is I think the golden egg in this situation, or the golden goose, like the fact that it's not a triple remake saga is actually quite enticing to me. Like,
just one game,
done nicely, brought to modern consoles. Even though obviously you can play the game on like 8th generation hardware, right? Like they re-released it, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they've actually remastered it with like tweaks, but it's essentially what you'd expect it to look like from the PS1 still at this point.
I think it's really cool. One thing that is weird to me though is that like they outsourced this from a development side of things and then brought it back into the studio. It's exactly what Square did with the original Final Fantasy VII. Well, the Final Fantasy VII remake, right? Like,
yeah,
and Square are the biggest mercenaries in the industry when it comes to this shit, dude. Because if they can chip off $1 or yen in their case,
yeah.
they will. Like, and I can't fault them for that because, like, again, we're developing websites right now, and like when it gets to the end point of developing websites, guess what happens? We outsource it because it's cheaper than like us working on it from an hourly rate.
It just makes you wonder if they're like they outsource it and then they're like, oh, we're really attached to this project. We really want it the specific way. Give it back. I wonder if that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if that's the case, that sucks because like the outsourcing team, like, like just let them do their job, dude. Like, and I wonder who they go to every time they do it because clearly, like, this is twice over now and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as for like, if I know if these leaks are reliable, I don't know. I've never seen Midori ever before. Do you know any of the previous leaks?
Yeah, Midori. Yeah, it's something that pops up. She pops up a lot. Yeah, it's a reliable leaker. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
But like we said, the NVIDIA leaks have everything that's been leaked there has come true. So I mean, it's coming.
Oh, what a job that was, especially when they alongside the E3 leaks when they leaked all the journalist information and stuff. That was terrible.
Yeah.
What's going on with this industry nowadays? But very far along. If we see it at the Xbox showcase, that'll be interesting because again, like you said, it's showing their partnership with like third-party developers and studios or whatever, publishers, platforms. But it's also like, I don't know whether it's like kind of a kick in the balls to Sony in many ways, like kind of going like, oh, we're going over here now, like fuck you. And I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
But it's one of those things where like maybe Sony would see it like, well, why couldn't you do it on our
look at this? No, look at it this way. Here's my opinion. The Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core game was they called it a remaster, but it effectively was a remake. Yeah. It got brought to Xbox day one, the same as PlayStation, and I think it's pretty clear. I could be wrong, but my speculation is that PlayStation, they're almost blunt. It's like, okay, a Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy is going to do gangbusters for us. It's going to be huge. It's going to sell consoles. We're going to money hat that. Yep. Final Fantasy 16, it's the next big entry in the series. It's an action-based game. We're going to money hat that. Oh, Crisis Core, that little spinoff, we're not paying you for that. Give it to Xbox. No. Oh, Final Fantasy 9 remake, but it's not near as ambitious. It's not as popular as 7. Yeah, you can give it to Xbox. We're not going to pay you for that. I think it's pretty simple. Yeah,
it's weird, right? Because like Sony pay for this exclusivity, and in many ways, like the controversy around the Final Fantasy VII remake as from a gatekeeping side of things from Sony's perspective is wild because it's all but confirmed like they paid for their development of that game and they have every right to keep it on their platforms at this point as an exclusive. And obviously they put it on PC and stuff and all that, but it's wild to me because like the rest of the series in many ways, for the most part, especially recently, is gone very third party, obviously at the behest of Square Enix, mainly probably to combat the lack of sales. But then like there's Final Fantasy 16, which is a PS5 exclusive, right? Like weird. It's Square is just we spoke about this on a previous episode. Square is just a very strange company when it comes to where it wants to be. They never feel like they know where they want to be in terms of a platform or where they want to be in the industry. Like, even if they go full third party, it's almost like they're not confident in that, but then they're also committing to it now. And it's like, it's all over the place.
Well, I feel like, maybe I might word this wrong, but like, I feel like they expect a high ceiling, but they don't want a low floor.
Sure.
And I think they're like discovering that they can't do that. Cause like the idea behind like a high ceiling and a low floor or like, it's basically like, okay, if we make an agreement with Sony and they give us money, then it's a lot harder for us to fail in a major way because we have this upfront cost. But because it's only on PlayStation, the ceiling for potential is much lower.
Yeah.
Whereas if they just put it out on everything and they take nothing, okay, we have the potential to sell way more than we're used to, but it's also possible if it doesn't sell well, we don't even have the PlayStation money to fall back on. So, but it always seems like they're kind of like, they want to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like, okay, we took the money. We took the money from Sony for the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy, but it's not selling 10 million copies each or more. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, to get to 10 million, you'd probably need day and date PC and maybe Xbox as well. Like I know Xbox doesn't have near as many consoles and there's not as big of like a Japanese influenced audience there, but like having it on Xbox might sell you another 1 million or 2 copies to get you up to that, over that 10 million. Or maybe like even Nintendo with the Switch too. They could probably downport stuff like that. So I don't know. It's a catch-22. What kind of risk do you want to take? So
yeah, and going back to the game itself, regardless of like the industry inside stuff that we've just covered, I think that Final Fantasy, the fact that like Final Fantasy in many ways is firing on all cylinders right now. Like if you're a Final Fantasy fan,
it's like a golden age.
It's a great time for you. Like you got the remakes, you've got the Pixel collection. Is it the Pixel collection or the Pixel remaster collection?
Pixel remasters, yeah. You get all six of the original.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. And yeah, now you're getting the Final Fantasy 9 remake. You've got the MMO still kicking off and doing well for itself in A Realm Reborn. You've just had, obviously, before Rebirth, you had Final Fantasy 16. It's a great time for like
they're
Final
doing great.
Fantasy fans.
Sales aren't good enough for Square, but they're doing great. So
yeah, they just have unrealistic expectations. Like
yeah. Absolutely. This comes from the PlayStation blog. Something we knew was coming. It's finally been announced. PlayStation VR2 players can access games on PC with an adapter starting on August 7th. So it says, when the PlayStation VR2 launched last year, we were thrilled to introduce PS5 players to a new generation of VR games with innovative gameplay and immersive sensory features. Inspired by our passion to bring gamers even more content options, we've been working to enable access to additional games on PC, complementing the diverse PS VR2 games lineup available on PS5. Today, we're happy to share that we will be rolling out support on August 7th. So obviously we know the reason that this device exists is because the PSVR 2 didn't sell for shit. And Sony doesn't want to pour endless resources in developing first party content for it. It's a very expensive device. They have a warehouse full of them. This little $60, this little $60 adapter will allow you to use this.
Bad. That's not a bad price.
No, it's not a bad price. And it'll allow you to use a very high quality headset on your computer.
Yes.
And well, before I ask this question that I was about to pose, let me get into some of the features here. I think this is interesting. Mm-hmm. Feature differences with PSVR2 on PS5. PSVR2 was designed from the ground up specifically for PS5. So you'll notice that some key features like HDR, headset feedback, eye tracking, adaptive triggers, and haptic feedback, other than Rumble, are not available when playing on PC. However, other high fidelity and sensory immersion features of PSVR2 are supported, including 4K visuals, 110-degree field of view, finger touch detection, and see-through view, as well as foveated rendering without eye tracking and 3D audio in supported games. So basically what they're saying is, let me convert this for you all, is they're saying, we made this thing for PlayStation 5, it didn't sell for shit, so we made this adapter to bring it to PC, but since it was never intended to be on PC, all of these special features that we designed to be used for the PS5, they don't work on PC anymore. Now, that sucks, and I know I was kind of harsh there, but like, to be fair, it's still a very high quality VR device that you can use on your computer. But my question for you, Joe, is, does this help sell their backstock of VR2 at all? Because for me, this seems like a clear way to give people who own a PS VR2 a great option to have a great VR headset on their PC if they already have the PS VR2 and a PC they can use it with. But how many people are going to go, you know what? I didn't want to spend $500 on a PSVR 2, but now that I can spend an extra $60 to get this adapter, I'll use it on my PC instead of buying anything like a MetaQuest 3, or potentially, even if it does go up against a MetaQuest 3, how long will it be before new VR comes out on PC that completely makes the PSVR 2 seem irrelevant? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's tracked that VR gaming is growing, despite what people say about it. Like, there's
mostly PC, I would assume, though.
Yeah, mostly PC. There's this weird thing going on where people think it's. I mean, it is a niche, obviously comparatively to like traditional gaming on consoles or PC gaming or whatever. Just like your normal sit at a desk or sit on a sofa kind of gaming. But ultimately, I think that people are really wrong with kind of the projections on where you think VR is going to go. People see it as this shitty gimmick that will die out. It's not. It's getting more accessible than ever. There's so much modularity when it comes to prices of headsets and prices of hardware within the Oculus range, or I mean, this is a prime example here with the PSVR 2 coming to PC, and obviously there's like Asus ones and stuff like that. And the technology is just getting better and better. I mean, they've literally just, obviously this has foveated rendering for the PSVR 2, which a lot of headsets have now, but the PSVR 2 has this really cool feature where it's really good for developers. Is if the foveated render is essentially like where you look based on your eye tracking or where your headset is in the game world, it will only render that stuff and that peripheral vision. And that's really dope. But I don't know whether this is actually going to make people want to buy a PSVR 2 over like a Steam headset, because you're literally comparing like an official product that is going to be supported via Steam on the largest form of VR gaming ever, like the platform itself, over something that is basically put together for just kind of like shits and gigs to, like you said, shift the last batch of sort of like produced headsets. And I feel like if anyone, like, here's another thing: the people that do the majority of people that do VR gaming are like really avid fans of that stuff, and they tune into it massively. And they're going to have the finger on the pulse massively when they see this and when they see it come to PC. And I think honestly, it's one of those weird things where I think they've kind of missed their mark with this hardware, because they should have put it on PC at the same time, been able to be used on the PC at the same time from launch. That should have been one of the feature sets of the PSVR 2. And maybe you would have seen a completely different timeline with what basically happened with the PSVR 2. You might have actually seen some pretty good fucking sales because it's split across two platforms. Like, I say this genuinely, like, I think time and time again, we've seen that consoles and platforms aren't sold well when they have a sub-platform attached to them and they kind of railroad you into that. We saw it with the Kinect. We saw it with the fucking Virtual Boy console in many ways.
Was it the Sega? Was it the 32X? Was the attachment to the
Yes.
top of the console?
Yeah. And the PSVR 2 is like the same thing. It's like people aren't going to buy that shit, and you cannot expect them to, especially at the price that it was pitted at originally. So in many ways, like, the way I see this is, it's like, yeah, good, well done. But I think this adapter only potentially serves for the majority of people that already have the PSVR 2 headset to plug it in and go and play, like, I don't know, Half-Life Alyx or something, or Beat Saber on PC and stuff like that. And for that, it'll be a really good thing. But I do not see this making PSVR 2 retroactively sell gangbusters for them.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. So
yeah, no, I think we're on the same page. I mean, I think you were a little kinder than I came off towards to VR. I know it's, for me, I know that it has a market that is growing like steadily, but not skyrocketing.
Yeah.
I know there's good experiences to have there, but the kind of gaming that I want to do, when it usually converts to VR, it does become gimmicky to me. Now, what I mean by that is like something like Horizon Call of the Mountain. Like that's a game to me. It's like I don't have any interest in that. That to me feels like something created so that I have an excuse to use VR. Whereas for me, for me, like VR, if you're going to try to get me interested in VR, it's like go play Resident Evil 4 Remake. VR. It's like that's a full game that I already love. Like that's the kind of experiences I want to have. So for me, like what I would like, the best chance for me to buy a PSVR would have been for them to either make a large amount of the games I already own usable with VR. Like, not only can I play Resident Evil 4, I can play God of War Ragnarok, I can play Zero Dawn, I can play Bloodborne, whatever. Or invest in first-party expensive games for it, which Sony isn't going to want to do because they're not confident in it. So, yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page there. I mean, hopefully this makes things better for people who are interested in this product.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important part. Like, you have to look at it from a consumer angle rather than a business angle here, because I think PlayStation have already committed to themselves that this is already done. And in many ways, like, I don't know whether this adapter is a result of PlayStation VR dying, or it's in the same ballpark as the games that are like still to come out. That Alien game, and the what's that? It's like sword fighting game that was from Behemoth. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this hardware, this adapter, is in the same ballpark as them, in the sense that they were already coming out with this shit. Like, and it's basically just like along for the ride, as the swan song era of the PlayStation VR motive. and like going back to the price point and like the idea that you've already got like various different options to game VR on PC. I mean, I'm looking at them now. You've got the HTC Vive Pro, which is £350. You've obviously got the way more like enthusiast level Valve Index, which is like ranging from $1,000 basically to $1,500. And then you obviously have the more like accessible, which is like the Oculus stuff, which is Oculus Quest 2 and stuff like that, which is like wireless and everything. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, again, you've got so many options there. You've got like the best in the business when it comes to like the Valve Index, if you want to go that way, to really commit to VR, which a lot of people would. Or you can go like, something a bit more like quaint, which is the Oculus Quest 2 or various different like versions of that at a lower price than a VR2, and you don't have to buy an adapter. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think that would make non like already VR gamers that have headsets want to buy a VR2 and get this adapter is in many ways not even based on the adapter. It's people that still want to play the very limited amount of PSVR2 titles, because otherwise, why would you buy a PSVR2 headset to play on PC when you can get better options out there that have more features already?
Here's what I'll offer you, Joe. Like, I'm not interested in acquiring a VR headset of any type, but if I had to go buy one today, because I'm mostly a filthy console gamer, I'd buy the VR2.
I would. There it is.
That's the because for me, it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm going to get into VR. Well, I love PlayStation.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy that, and then I can also use it on my gaming PC. So, but I do feel like I'm not only am I not actually interested in going to spend money on one of these, even if I were, I think I'm a very weird cross section of consumer. So I don't know that it's that successful. But yeah, I mean, like, I know that like, Vives and MetaQuest or whatever are like better, but like, just because I like Sony and their branding, I like their products, I probably would do this. And then I would also take it and hook up. I'd be like, okay, I bought this for my PC, but I'm gonna go hook it up to my PlayStation and play Resident Evil 4 Remake. So
yeah, 100%. Well, there we go. You've proved me wrong.
This next story comes from VideoGamesChronicle.com. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PC has been ready for at least 7 months, it's claimed. Deal Labs user Bilbo Kuhn, who we've mentioned here before, who has a long record of reliably leaking game announcements and other information, says they believe the game has been finished for some time. According to the insider sources, development on their PC version started at least as far back as 2021. What's more, and this is the most important piece of information in the article, we believe that the game's development is well and truly complete, dating back to at least November 2023. Speculating as to why PC port wasn't released alongside the PS5 version has still yet to appear. Bilbo Kuhn wonders if the game is being held back to release alongside second season of The Last of Us TV show, which is scheduled for 2025. So this makes all the sense in the world. I can connect two dots really quickly here. One dot is just the last episode we were talking about, or Herman Hulse said that what they wanted to do was release games on the PlayStation and then release those games on the PC later, and then have people like go to the console to get the next one. So we saw that happen with The Last of Us Part 1 remake, which I think that was 2022. So this would line up that it's going to be about 2 to 3 years later we get the second game. Also, they want to line up Part 2 Remastered with The Last of Us HBO show to have a game there, just like they had a game with the first one, to maximize sales and to kind of cross, like, I don't know what the word is, cross-pollinate between like the fans of the show and the games. And my second point of reference here is that look at Nintendo. Nintendo has routinely been known as the only company that like finishes products and then just sits on them for months or years. And it's because they're waiting to fill the right slots. They're waiting to get the maximum amount of effect out of the product. And a lot of people call them crazy because most companies don't think like that. Like Sony and Microsoft are typically like, get it out before the quarter's over. Yeah. And then like, maybe it doesn't sell as well as we wanted, but at least we got that bump before the quarter. And they don't think long term. And I think you're seeing Sony here start to react a little bit like Nintendo, where not only can we like very intelligently spread out our PC releases from the console releases, but we can line them up with our multimedia plans, like with the show, with Last of Us 2, have the game on the shelf for it. When they do another Uncharted with what's his name? Oh, Tom Holland, my bad.
Tom Holland, yeah.
When when they do the other Uncharted movie. I think we've heard murmurings of potentially another Uncharted game in development, whether that's a remake or a continuation with a different character or both. They could have that lined up. We saw there was a rumored Twisted Metal game, I think, that I don't know. I think it might have got canceled, but they obviously had a Twisted Metal Peacock show.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think it's a really smart decision. And while obviously as a consumer, you're kind of like, if you had it done, couldn't you have just released it so that I could have bought it on my platform of choice?
Yep.
But as far as a company goes, like this is a really smart move, and I'm not surprised at all. I would say this is 100% factually true if I had to guess. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I won't be surprised if obviously it is true. I think that this screams again like such confidence for the brand, and also like such confidence for The Last of Us, because obviously like they're confident in the sense that they've got the HBO deal and they're doing the show, and obviously it's been greenlit for a second season. But I also think, like, even despite the criticisms of the second game, and the amount of controversy with that, in relation to, Neil Druckmann and, just people not including myself, because I wasn't part of the outspoken minority in many ways, but I was a unspoken minority in that, like, even though that happened where people were like, I don't like the story, I don't like the narrative, it's crap, it's ruined my characters, it's character assassinated, all this stuff, which I mostly align with when it comes to the criticisms. This shows unwavering confidence for that IP as a prestige product for not only Naughty Dog, but for just PlayStation in general. And the fact that they're confident to sit on it in a year that it's weird because, like, on paper, well, not necessarily on paper, but like on the outset, when we saw this year in terms of no like proper like amazing like first party studios like from a AAA level, everyone was like, oh shit, like, is this Xbox's year then? Like, is PlayStation gonna like, fumble the bag, and like PlayStation's gonna pick it up and run in many ways, like, or Xbox gonna pick it up and run? It's like, this is a complete like sort of basically them saying no. Like, we are going to do what we want to do. We're going to prepare this year for next year. And again, I've said this before, in this transitionary period, and basically we'll release things when we're ready. And like you said, they're seemingly taking notes out of like Nintendo's handbook here, and I like it. I like it a lot. It makes sense. There's, like you said, the cross pollination or the osmosis of kind of the show and stuff like that will obviously bring sales into the PC remaster and stuff, just like it did with The Witcher 3 on Netflix when that launched. It's going to work out for them. I can't see why it wouldn't. And yeah, hope it has a good launch. So
I kind of love it because I'm like, Nintendo is like supplying me with like my high quality platformers and my Zeldas and Marios, and then you have like PlayStation offering like the premier AAA experiences like your God of War and Last of Us.
Yeah, your narrative experiences, yeah.
And if they both kind of keep doing their thing and fulfilling those pockets, I'm very happy. And like, it's not to diss on Xbox, but it's just like Xbox really hasn't nailed any one specific thing. At best, what they've nailed is services. Mm-hmm. Their subscriptions and their backwards compatibility and all that stuff. But they haven't really, like, there's not really a thing I go to on Xbox. No. There's not a thing there for me. So I think that, there's a lot of confidence in Nintendo and Sony. And I like to see Sony kind of mimic Nintendo in this way. So I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm excited to. I mean, like, just not even about the PC release though, but like, I've been playing The Last of Us Part 1 recently, and I'm loving it. And I'm excited to go back to Part 2 and see if the game is as emotionally impactful to me as the original was, because I remember walking away from the original Last of Us Part 2. This is the original game on the PS4 when I played it, and just being like, I didn't physically do this, but I emotionally like crawled into the fetal position. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to play a game ever again after that. And I had to go. I don't even know what I played after that. I think I went and played like something that wasn't even narrative related, because I couldn't deal with like just playing anything else, because it was just like, wow, that ending is just like, fuck me, what a gut punch. But
if you had to guess when you replay Last of Us 2, do you think there's a better chance you like it less or like it more? No wrong answer.
I don't know, dude, because like, I have rarely been, like, from a narrative perspective, I have rarely gone back, and even if it's a movie, a TV show, a game, I've rarely gone back and gone, you know what, I really love this narrative now. I can't think of a single time that's happened. I've done it from a gameplay standpoint, like Ninja Gaiden. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it for Ninja Gaiden Black, but I don't know, dude. I really hope so, because like the thing with me with The Last of Us Part 2 is I think everything about it is immaculate. Like technically, accessibility, graphics, style, gameplay, everything is so fucking good. But it's just like the main part of it for me, the heart, the thing that pumps the blood around everything, around the entire body of The Last of Us Part 2, is so like, to me, it's not that it's poor in terms of it's a bad story necessarily. It's just that it's so like done in many ways. It's been done thousands of times, and the craziest thing is that kind of narrative is done better on games like even sibling games like God of War Ragnarok in terms of that idea of revenge and stuff like that. And whenever there's like that immediate comparison in terms of how you can take that theme and that sort of arc, it's hard to like get over that hump, you know? So
yeah, I just wish people didn't have to be so extreme with it, because like,
yeah,
you know, usually when the conversation of The Last of Us Part 2 comes up, it comes down to one or two things. It's either game is freaking woke trash garbage, I hate it, or game's a masterpiece.
Yes.
And, you know, I think it's completely, I don't know what the problem is with two people playing the game and having different opinions on it. It's okay. Like Joe didn't really like it narratively. I did, but he doesn't think it's woke trash, and I don't think it's a masterpiece.
It's far from woke trash.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'll be excited to hear your opinions once you get through it again.
Oh yeah.
This next story, it's not too big, but I have a reason for kind of bringing it up. This comes actually from Kind of Funny. Greg Miller, in a recent predictions episode of the show, said he was talking with someone with knowledge of development at Monolith on the Wonder Woman game, and says that it's in a troubled state and not to expect it anytime soon. And the reason I brought this up, it's kind of I guess it kind of makes me a hater a little bit. The reason I brought this up is a couple things. One, I'm just not really impressed. Okay, Monolith is a good studio in the sense that I think they make good products. Yeah. But their Lord of the Rings games to me were just so devoid of soul and heart. They were they were, you know, AAA, they were fun, but there was just no soul or heart to those games, and I just look at them very much as hollow products. So I'm not really a big Monolith fan. And then, you know, after Shadow of War, people were wondering what their next game was going to be. Was it going to be another like straight up Shadow game from Lord of the Rings? Was it going to be a different Lord of the Rings game? Was it going to be a new IP? And then it came out they're doing Wonder Woman, and it came out that the thing is like the relevance. Not that like in a sense Wonder Woman is always relevant, but like the relevance of like the peak of like I think it was 2017 was the first Wonder Woman movie with what's her name, Gal Gadot. Yeah, like the peak of interest in that and like the DCEU. Yeah, that's kind of past us. So when it comes out, it's kind of like irrelevant. And then also like I'm pretty sure James Gunn's new like DC universe has kind of said they're not really going to bother with Wonder Woman for a long time. So I'm like, who is really asking for this? And it's also going to use the trademarked Nemesis system from Monolith, and I'm like, or from the Shadow games, and I'm like, I don't really see how. I'm not saying it couldn't work, but like, you don't think of Wonder Woman and go, I want the Nemesis system where the orcs remember me and I cut their head off and they come back with their head sewn back on. Obviously, it'll be different in Wonder Woman, but it just begs a lot of questions to me, and I think it all goes back to WB, because I'm like, first of all, what I wanted from a Lord of the Rings game is something that's narratively awesome and beautiful and interesting, because that's what Lord of the Rings is known for. They use that IP to do something completely devoid of interesting narratively.
Yeah.
And then they go on to work on Wonder Woman, which seems out of like time with the idea of making a Wonder Woman game. Then they're incorporating the Nemesis system, which also doesn't seem to make sense to me. And then you look at WB and like they put out Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and it was like, what were you thinking? We knew that was a bad idea years ago. Yeah. And hearing this news, I'm just like, I'm not asking for this. I don't want this. Like, hopefully this comes out. It's a great Wonder Woman game people love and it sells. But I don't think this is going to do well. What do you think, Joe?
I kind of want to go back to what you said about like Shadow of Mordor and War. Like, I think the biggest problem with Shadow of Mordor and War is that it's literally set in Mordor for like the entire game, or for the most part, right? Like, and imagine Lord of the Rings, like the films with just hypothetically, if he was always battling, you were always seeing battles in Mordor, it'd be like,
remove the charm and the beauty.
like, why? Yeah. Like the reason why Lord of the Rings works so much is because it's a combination of juxtapositions on all accounts. You know, you've got like the Maya stuff with Sauron and Gandalf in Isengard. You've got, you know, the Shire, the Libertarian Shire, that's absolutely gorgeous, but also incredibly naive and ignorant to the rest of the world, and like the Shire. And
what did the hobbits want? They set out to destroy the ring because they wanted to save the Shire. They were thinking of their home, the place they love. Like, what are we fighting for in the Shadow of Mordor games?
Yeah, in Shadow of Mordor, you're just like, oh, we got to kill the Hands of Sauron. The Hands of Sauron.
Just in the desolate lands of Mordor and the volcanoes and shit. Come on.
It's like you're already dead at this point. Like,
you literally died and you're being kept alive by a wraith and like
Celebrimbor. Yeah,
you're stealing the ring from Sauron. You're making a new ring under Sauron. Yeah. It's just I hate it.
And then it like it modifies lore like you wouldn't believe, especially in Shadow of War with like the Balrogs and the Shelob, especially like
when that was the hot, sexy spider who had a relationship with Sauron.
Oh, that was wild, bro. Yeah. But yeah, like I'm not normally a lore nut, and I can kind of get around it, but like that was just like, what the fuck?
Well, to me, it's just like when you look at like, okay, for instance, Star Wars for comparison. Yeah. Obviously, Star Wars has a great narrative that people love, story and lore and all that stuff. Yep. But Star Wars can also exist as, I just want to shoot fighter ships in the sky.
100%.
I just want to do lightsaber battles. But for me, the most integral thing to the IP of Lord of the Rings is the deep, like, narrative, the world building.
Yeah. It's the
and that's just not there.
The themes, like, I mean, Tolkien literally wrote it in the perspective of a World War I soldier in the trenches. It's about that brotherly bond, and which is often, like, especially nowadays, misconstrued to homosexuality and thinking like Frodo and Sam love each other beyond platonic means, and it's like,
yeah.
You don't get it. Like, how could you? I mean, even I don't in many ways, because it's like, well, like I wasn't in the war. You don't have that bond that soldiers have. No one will until you're there, and then you realize, you literally have each other's lives in your hands. So, and that bled massively. That was a massive inspiration, obviously, to Lord of the Rings as he wandered through the countrysides of the Great British Isles, but. Going back to Wonder Woman, like, and how like Monolith's design can translate onto that game, I don't understand it, and in many ways, like, it's in trouble development because it's like just as an outset, as a concept, it's like, well, yeah, like you are attaching something like that patented, copyrighted, owned WB mechanic, which is so selfish of them to do, bearing in mind after the release of Shadow of War. To a game where you fight criminals, but you can also fight souped up superheroes like Wonder Woman, supervillains like Cheetah and stuff. And it's like, okay, so how is that going to play into it? Is it going to play into it in the sense of like, there's again the way supervillains react based on your boss fights, and then and this is the craziest thing. This mechanic that they're touting on and on about, this Nemesis mechanic, it could be as big or as little as anything. It could be so minor, and this could all be like a red herring in many ways, like
kind of fluff piece kind of thing.
Fluff piece, marketing spiel. Because if we can't figure out how they're going to use that right now, and then going off of this idea that there's development issues as well, I wouldn't be surprised if like this game is like kind of rudderless in many ways. Like there's no one at the wheel, and it's just kind of like going off into the breakers in many ways and into the rocks. So I don't know, dude. I'd say I'm nervous, but I don't like. This sounds horrible, and coming off what we said about Concord and like Nuance, I don't care.
I'm not interested in the game. Yeah,
like I wish the people who are making it, the creatives, all the best. Obviously, like I don't mean it to them when I say this, but this is a game that like your upper leadership and your marketing team and your executives have to get in order to make anyone interested in this right now, because in many ways, like Monolith. Not as creators, but like as the executives within Monolith and also like WB, they're kind of, especially with Suicide Squad, they kind of looked at like kind of, you kind of in many ways like somewhat the anti-hero of the industry right now. Like you're not on good fronts, and you're making a lot of poor design decisions and releasing things at the wrong time, such as like that Batman VR thing, that Arkham VR game.
Yeah,
and it's all kind of coming into this very like horrible culmination of not gauging fan perception and gamer perception at all. and you're running amok because of it. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I don't know what it would take to get me to buy the Wonder Woman game. I mean, maybe if it was a straight up copy of the Arkham games and it was actually done as well, I'd be interested. Even then, I'm not a big fan of Wonder Woman, but I don't think that's what that game is going to be. Yeah. Over to our last story from the PlayStation blog, the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree hands-on report. I'm going to skim through a bunch of this because there's a lot to say here, so I'm going to pick and choose.
Go read it.
It says, exploring the new mechanics, weapons, and challenges to be found in From Software's biggest ever expansion. The Land of Shadow is calling. After a more than 2-year wait, we're weeks away from the launch of Shadow of the Erdtree, the enormous DLC for Elden Ring. From Software hasn't spent those years basking the accolades their first open world adventure received. Instead, they've been hard at work on this, their biggest and most ambitious expansion ever. When I recently got a chance to go hands-on with Shadow of the Erdtree, even the teeny slice I saw made it easy to remember why Elden Ring is so beloved. Rise, tarnished, and hear the things I saw. So it talks about being in a new area, completely separate from the continent that we were on in Elden Ring proper. The new opponents, the new weapons you can get. I mean, literally, there is paragraphs upon paragraphs of preview here in the PlayStation blog. There's also previews from
anyone that's listening. Go read the article.
It's really cool stuff. Me and Joe are super hyped for this. There's lots of content creators who also got time with it. But to kind of just read like the summary at the end here, before me and Joe talk about our excitement, it says Shadow of the Erdtree is shaping up to be a worthy expansion to From Software's now legendary adventure. If you've been away from Elden Ring for some time, jumping into this new region will feel comfortingly familiar, but even for veterans, there is plenty to uncover. So what I've heard, Joe, is that you actually have to beat Radon and Moog to be able to start this DLC. And
which is crazy because they're
tough bosses. I mean,
optional, though. That's what I was about to say. Like
they're optional. Radon, I feel like if you've beat Elden Ring, it's very likely that you've beat Radon. Yeah. Moog, though, I only actually beat him in the last month to prepare for this DLC. So
he's the blood guy, isn't he? Who's like,
yes,
yeah, he's a bastard of a boss, but yeah, awesome.
I can't wait. Like, I actually don't want to look at it much more because I'm like, I know this is going to be God tier.
Yeah,
so
it's gonna be a 10.
Day one. We're gonna be in on this. We're gonna be talking about it on the podcast. And if I had to guess, like the first podcast we talk about after playing it, Joe will be like, "Yeah, I'm like 6 bosses in." I'm like, "I almost beat the first boss." Is where I'll be. So Joe will be way further on than me because he's much better at these games. But I loved Elden Ring. I gave Elden Ring a 9 out of 10, but like every time I think on it, I'm just like, but isn't it kind of a 10 out of 10, Brian? Like I have problems with it though, so I'm like, I give it a 9, but it's
an objective 10. It's an objective
such
10.
a 10 game. Yeah.
It's just that subjectively, I mean, I'm the same. Like it's like the highest 9 I can give, but subjectively, it's just that it's a bit lower. That's all for me, just because it's not on the level of impact and sort of how I prefer my Souls games. That's all it is.
Exactly, same. And there's a good chance that this expansion is game of the year quality, and it's not a new game. So.
Yeah, I mean, this like you said, it's an expansion, and it's basically going to be on the level of, in terms of DLCs, like the old Hunters, Shivering Isles.
Except this was a 2-year development, and it's the only expansion for the game. It seems very clear this is going to be like probably 2 expansions worth.
Yeah, in many ways, and I guess the more fitting comparison is like Blood and Wine from The Witcher 3, because that took them a year to do, alongside Hearts of Stone, but. And that was basically, like, let's be honest, that's basically a whole new game. But this could take the bar of like how expansions / DLCs or whatever should be to a whole other light, because it might even this could potentially like just end up on the Game of the Year awards as Game of the Year. Like I wouldn't be surprised like if Jeff breaks some form of rules in the.
He's like, oh, this is now up for it. Yeah,
I mean, you know how much he loves Elden Ring. Like he was the first to like debut the gameplay on. Was it on Summer Game Fest? It was on Summer Game Fest, I think.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And he was like, "Yeah, Elden Ring." It was like, "Look how awesome that was!" And I remember him like grinning from.
He pulled down his pants and flashed his dong. That's how much he was about it. So.
It was badass, dude. Everyone was like, "Oh, Elden Ring!" Like, but yeah, I mean, new opponents await. I mean, some of the subtitles here. So, new opponents await. Rebuild your armory. Introduce around 100 new weapons for players to discover. And there's also 8 brand new weapon types as well. Like, oh my god!
In the preview build they let people play, the character was a level 120. which makes me feel good because I never went into New Game Plus, and I'm going to go into this at 170. So.
Oh my god, he's cheating.
It's not cheating.
I know it's not. I know.
I'm gonna make it as easy for myself as possible.
So. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I'm gonna just go straight in because I've done everything on my one playthrough that I did. So
yeah,
and I mean literally everything. I did all the dungeons as much as I possibly could find. I think did all the bosses. I found all the gear. I went hard. Did all the plot lines I needed to do, and yeah, dude, this is a day one for me. I'm not. I don't think I'll pre-order it. I'll just pick it up on day.
Yeah.
But like this is day one, so I better get my ass into gear because I have to play. I have to beat Jedi Survivor. So,
well, that's a good segue, Joe. I mean, we're done with the stories for this week. So, what have you been playing? Has it still been just Survivor, or did you dip into Last of Us anymore, or just Jedi Survivor?
Just Jedi Survivor. Admittedly, like I said at the start, I haven't really been playing many games. I've been touching grass a lot more, just because. I mean, like my mum's birthday's tomorrow. So like I've been like prepping for that and buying her presents and researching that stuff. And it's obviously as people get older and stuff, like and they get more stuff, it's harder to buy things for them.
He got his mom a pre-order for the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC.
I bought her a whole PS5, dude. I was like, listen, my PS5 is mine. You can stay away from my baby. But here is.
You and your mom are gonna put your PS5s next to each other and play the new expansion for Elden Ring together.
There you go. Downstairs.
That'd be wild, wouldn't it?
On the old ass plasma TV that she's happy with, even though I keep urging her to buy OLED or whatever.
Yeah,
can't wait. No, yeah. So I've been doing that. A lot of exercising, but I've been playing. Like I said, I've been playing Jedi Survivor, and I'm really enjoying it. I think for the most part, it is a overall sort of development of what Fallen Order is. Like the abilities are better, the combat is better, the enemy variety is stronger and more varied. The environments like Kobo is cooler, I would say, than the majority of what like linear environments were in Fallen Order. But I also think, despite all that, there's some issues in the sense that, and I don't know how much I've said about this already, so I apologize to the listeners and the viewers if they've already heard this before, but there's technical issues with the FPS drop between the game on PS5 in performance mode. As soon as you go into cutscenes, it drops to like 24 frames per second cinema. It's almost like Martin Scorsese decided on the frame rate or something. And then like as soon as it's out, it flips again, like immediately back to 60. And it's jarring. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The fact that there's no switching between all your lightsaber stances is bothersome to me. I don't particularly love that still. I'm still not gotten around to it. Like why that's a design decision. I really don't. Just make it either like a scroll wheel, you know, like a weapon wheel that comes up, or like a scroll through on the D-pad. Just let me do it. Like, why not? And another thing is, like, and this is my fault. So, like, it is partly my fault, but I also think, like, from a design decision, it's very odd that they decided to do it. And Darren will know this, a listener of this podcast, because he was in the stream when I was talking about this. I am about 10 hours in, maybe even more than that. And I'm at a point now where like, Kobo is the first planet you get on after the main narrative part in Coruscant. And it's basically like your hub world at the start, and it's the biggest planet in the game as far as I'm aware of, you know, what people have told me. Because of the way I play, which is completely opposite to Bryan, I have to go around and do loads of things. I have to do everything. If it's on the map, I have to do it because I just love to bake in the way that world is and the extra content. But the problem is this Kobo is so fucking huge, dude. And it's like, there's like 80, well, I would say no, there's like 50% of it you can do before you move on to the next planet as soon as you hit Kobo. But a lot of it's locked off. And my problem is it's so huge, even though I say you can do like 40 to 50% of it before like you have to come back, moving on to the narrative and you have to come back to the planet. It's a really weird thing where like I feel like that's even too much. It doesn't sound much on paper when I say it 40 to 50%, but I genuinely think that is even too much. It should have been 10 to 20. And then go away, Joe. Like, go and do the narrative. And like Darren was specifically telling me in my chat, he was like, dude, just leave this planet, bro, because it's like hindering your, and it was hindering your enjoyment of it. And it just sucks. And then I'm not really connecting with the narrative so far because it feels like Cal is kind of aimless in many ways. Like he has a goal of finding this sacred place of Jedi riches and everything. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It begins with T or something like that. And he's got that goal in his mind, and he's forming a team together. But none of it really feels very connected and like it's actually connecting to much of grander scale right now. So combining that with the free roam element just feels weird. And like, here's the thing, like you find a certain character. I don't want to spoil it, even though it's really early on in the story. You find a certain character that's in a Bacta tank, and the twist is that he ends up like being like evil or whatever. And it's like you could see that from a mile away, and it's just like, Cal, come on, dude, like what's going on here? Like, how can you fall for this? And it just feels like this lack of progression in all the right areas for like Cal as a character, as a Jedi, being naive from Fallen Order, an overabundance of side content that is too much immediately for the player, so it like hinders the pacing. Combine that with the technical problems on PlayStation because we all know it released poorly. And just in general, like overall, I think I prefer Fallen Order so far in the sense that Fallen Order had a much tighter narrative, and I feel like it kept you on the straight and narrow when it needed to, but it also allowed you to veer off a little bit, just enough to make you feel like this game is like quite big and significant in that regard. So yeah, but it's still a cool game. I'd probably give it like a 7 so far, in all honesty. It might go to an 8, might go to a 9. I don't know. It depends.
Yeah, it's pretty evident that when you played, like if you look at the two games, there's more planets to visit in Fallen Order, and the planets are smaller and there's less to do there. So the game is bigger in Survivor. There's more to do. It's more diverse. But for it being a Star Wars game where you're flying around in your ship, which I mean, you're not like controlling the ship or anything like that, but
no.
Survivor feels less like galaxy hopping and more kind of just planting your feet in the ground in one place for a long time.
Yeah.
And if you have to do all that side content, it can very much feel like, oh, come on, like nothing's moving on. So I do think there's better pacing in Fallen Order. I just think the benefits of Survivor for me made me like it more. Survivor, like Cal is much better as a character, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think this. I don't necessarily, I won't go as far as to say, like, I think that the story is objectively more interesting than Fallen Order. It's just that the story is fresh and new, where Fallen Order was very much like, hey, remember the prequels? Hey, remember
you know? Get that.
So I really kind of, I feel like they came into their own with Survivor more, but yeah, you spend a lot of time on like 2 planets and you spend so much time there, it can get kind of exhausting. But
yeah. And I also think from a gameplay sense, like, this game wants to be a Souls game, which it's Souls-like, but
for sure. Yeah.
The thing with it is the gameplay for me is just nowhere near as refined as what Souls games have, and I don't think that's too off base. But where like I think a lot of people don't probably resonate with me with that is that I would go to the extent of the reason why it doesn't feel so how would I say, like, refined as Souls games, Soulsborne, which majority of Souls likes don't, that aren't from FromSoft, is that everything feels like you're on delay when you fight enemies, and there's certain enemies that are just too much, too quickly. Prime example is, like, on Kobo, again, me doing everything, I went and fought the spawn of Ogdo Bogdo, which is the toad from the original game, and he is just an asshole, like, straight up. He is so unrelenting with his attacks. He has very little unblockable attacks, and he also has this tongue attack, like the first game, which is an instant one-shot kill. And I just feel like there is little window for me to attack, and he also does way too much damage, and he is way too aggressive. He needs more downtime between all of his attacks, and he needs more telegraphing as well. And it just feels like my not my skill set in terms of a player, but my skill set as a character in the game is never going to be equipped for this character until I get to his level or to a level above him, so I can kick him down, like I can kick downwards to him in many ways, proverbially, if that makes sense. And I just feel like, I know I'm good enough to beat this character. I mean, like, this enemy, I beat Sekiro fucking to the nth dimension. I beat Dark Souls to the nth dimension. I beat Elden Ring to the nth dimension. This game should not be harder than the rest of them. And this is one of the reasons
it's not designed as well. Yeah.
Yes, it's not designed as well. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like, it comes into that conversation of difficulties. It's like I'm playing this on what seems to be like the equivalency of like a Dark Souls difficulty system, with the second hardest difficulty, but the mechanics in the game aren't refined enough to emulate that and to represent the same that FromSoft does.
See, that makes there's a whole argument there for a whole other episode of like that's why people complain about like Elden Ring, all the Souls games, they don't have a difficulty setting. Well, the game is so tightly tuned around one difficulty.
Yeah, and this is exactly like that we come back to, like you just said, where it's like this is why this is one of the reasons why FromSoft fans just are so adamant for that studio, just like Nintendo does, where they have one difficulty, one design way to play. When you play Mario, you have one difficulty. It's one and done, and it's better for it because it's the most tightly refined, like focus tested from QA side as well, game experience that you'll ever like have the pleasure to experience. And yeah, I mean, like, just again to go on that more, it's like when I fight other enemies, I died once on Kobo doing other things, and that was my mistake. I like overextended and got myself like rushed by enemies. But then so I died once, and I never died before that in that game. And then all of a sudden, when I go to Ogdo Bogdo Spawn Boy Frogman, he instantly kills me like 15 to 20 times, and I'm like, artificial difficulty scaling here. Your mechanics aren't good enough for this stuff.
Yeah.
This is why people like me argue so hard for these difficulties to be one and done in FromSoft games. So, yeah, but TLDR is still a good game. I'm probably going to play it more tonight, more tomorrow, and then maybe Sunday evening. So, yeah, what have you been playing anyway, Brian?
Yeah, so I finally finished Stellar Blade. It's kind of been an ongoing conversation I've had through this podcast since we started. And I finally beat the game, and I loved this game so much. I loved the story, and like, I understand that the writing isn't amazing and the characters aren't mind blowing, but like, I really loved this story, and the ending was so great, and how it all resolved was so awesome. And I feel so attached to it. Like, I really enjoyed the game. And the thing is, though, that I can't overlook is that everywhere everyone says like, well, yeah, but it's Nier Automata, but not as good. It's like that game already came out. It told a really compelling story. It did it better. And Stellar Blade's a great game, but it's just mimicking that, but not doing it as well. So
yeah,
where I'm hearing that everywhere, like, I beat the game and I love it. And like, without spoiling anything, like, basically what Stellar Blade is exploring and what Nier Automata also explored is like what it means to be human, and like what if you're not human but everything about you functions as one. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you human? And there's that's kind of the question it asks. So if that compels you, that's
very Blade Runner.
Yeah, it's very Blade Runner. So if that compels you, that's one reason to maybe be interested in Stellar Blade or Nier Automata. But because I beat Stellar Blade and I loved it so much, and it has this profound effect on me with its story, but that is apparently not as good as what came before with Nier Automata, I was like, okay, well, since I loved it so much, I want to jump right into Nier Automata. And you guys will see a trend here, because that's also part of why I'm watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, is because
he's going full weeb.
Yeah, because Nier Automata's own director said in an interview that, like, if you liked Nier Automata's story, don't thank me. I just ripped off Neon Genesis Evangelion. So this all, from Stellar Blade to Neon Genesis Evangelion to I'm sorry, and I skipped over Nier Automata. Like, all these things kind of flow together with their concepts. So I did start playing Nier Automata. I haven't got in even full 2 hours yet. I've been busy. But I'm really enjoying it so far. It's a PS4 title that doesn't have a PS5 version. Mm-hmm. So I immediately, of course, I've noticed the visual downgrade from Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade's like a hot new title. But I can tell there is a sense of, like, I don't want to say integrity, because that downplays how great Stellar Blade is, but like Nier Automata has like a very unique vibe that it feels like it's trying to do something new and special. And I see that. The combat's different than Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade mimics something closer to Dark Souls, where like Nier Automata feels more like arcadey.
Yep.
And I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only 2 hours in. My initial impression is I'm going to love this game a lot. But what I think is most surprising to me from it is that the game opens up with you in a ship, and you control the ship. Basically, if you guys picture like arcade shooters like Galaga and stuff, where you're like in a little ship and you're shooting aliens, that's how Nier Automata opens. And they introduced the gameplay in this like arcadey spaceship thing. And then it transcends into like when you're on the ground playing as 2B. Yep. And 2B's ground third-person combat is an extension of the arcade combat. Yeah. And it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it's basically like, hey, these arcade games, right? Well, here's one, play it. and then we'll put you on the ground, and yeah, you learned it already because you did it in the sky, and it's like the same gameplay carried forward. Now you do play as 2B, this girl, where it's like hack and slashy, where you have like a heavy attack and a regular attack, but then you also have this little droid character that flies around with you, and you can continually shoot bullets out of the little droid.
Yep.
So you can continue to have this similar kind of arcadey gameplay, but on the ground. And it's just brilliant the way that they do that. They also will like have you play in third person, and then you'll like organically go into like side scrolling.
Yeah.
So the game design is like really interesting and different and immaculate. And the world building's great. And I'm loving it so far. The art design, I think I'm going to love this game. Like I said, I'm only a little over an hour into it, but I'm loving it, Joe. And you said you liked it, right? So I think I'm in for something. I've never played a platinum game, really.
Yes.
I mean, I tried Bayonetta, wasn't really for me. And I did beat Final Fantasy 16, which I don't know if you knew this, Joe, but Final Fantasy 16, all the giant kaiju boss battles were done by Platinum Games.
Oh, really?
So,
wow.
Yes. So I do have some Platinum Games experience, not much, but I'm really impressed, dude. There was a segment, like, again, I won't spoil, but there was a segment where the game like wanted me to adjust like the settings, but it was in the lore of the game, and I was like, holy shit, this is like fourth wall breaking almost. Like, very cool. So I'm loving Nier Automata.
Nier Automata does that like automata.
I think it's automata is how you're supposed to say
automata.
it.
Yeah. I think in Japan they say automata or something like that.
Okay, maybe I could be wrong.
Well, yeah, but it's just how dialect works, isn't it? It's how we like put emphasis on vowels and stuff like that. But the way like Automata's vibes is so cool because like I love its landscape and its style of level design in the sense that it has that like naturalistic world, that post-apocalyptic world, and it's so stylized, and like you said, the way it blends the mechanical nature into the gameplay, kind of similar to the way like Dead Space does it in many ways and stuff like that. Like there's a term for that I can't exactly remember. It's like some form of like onboarding or whatever. But it's just so good. The way that game opens up with like the various characters as you go through, I don't want to spoil anything, and then the way that game ends, mind blowing stuff. The way it gives players at the end. I really don't want to spoil this for you. So I'm trying to like word my things very carefully. Like gives you agency over a certain very important decision that is both tangential to the narrative, but also to your entire playthrough. Literally speaking, is mind-blowingly cool, and it questions, like you said, the idea of like what makes a human and all this stuff, and whether just having organs and stuff, and you're born from another human, it makes you human or not. The ending bridges the gap between mechanical ingenuity and you being a gamer and that theme in one very unique way that I cannot say what it is because I will spoil it.
Yeah.
So just off, people will know what I'm saying, like what I mean by that when they listen to this. But yeah, it just
feels like I'm playing a potential GOAT. Is what it feels like. It feels like
I would say it is. Like it's not quite on my top 50 just because there's so many other games from my childhood on there, but it's mind-blowingly good, dude, and people speak about it for a reason. And it's crazy that like Platinum did it, but like Platinum's a really weird, interesting developer in the sense that they have like really high hits like Bayonetta and this and Revengeance from Metal Gear Solid, but then they also have really low hits. Like what was that Square Enix game that they made? Babylon's Fall or Babylon?
Yeah, they did like Vanquish.
Vanquish was good, but it was just
The
very
Wonderful
short.
101.
Yeah. But yeah, so awesome. Yeah, Babylon's Fall. Yeah.
Okay. So Joe, my special question for you this week. We'll make this a little quicker and it'll be right on topic, and we'll get out of here. But speaking of me like diving into Neon Genesis Evangelion and Nier Automata and Stellar Blade, I've been thinking a lot about how media influences other media and how you can see, something in one game or one movie or one book or one show, whatever, music, that very clearly it exists. That piece of art was created because it was inspired by something else. And it's so cool when you can draw those ties together. Me and Joe talked yesterday about how like there's a reference in Death Stranding to a moment from Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Many references,
many references. So I love to see the inspiration from people and how those carry through different projects. So, I mean, I kind of already answered the question for myself in this episode. My example is your Automata and Stellar Blade and Neon Genesis Evangelion. Give me one that you love, Joe. One, it doesn't have to be a game, but I'm guessing it probably will be. Could be a game, book, movie, whatever. What's a time where you played a game or watched a movie, read a book, whatever, and you saw an influence from something else very clearly, and you loved the reference, you thought it was cool, you love to see that come over?
That is a really hard question because I'm blanking right now.
And I may have put you on the spot. If I put you on the spot, we could return next week, and you could answer that, because I did kind of already answer on my side. I have a running theme through this episode of the two games in the show that I'm engaging in right now.
Yeah, that's
because like another instance. Of course, this isn't PlayStation, but like Halo is clearly influenced by Starship Troopers and Aliens. Like that wouldn't exist the way it does if it wasn't for that.
I mean,
yeah.
I honestly, I would say, like, hopefully, like, it's probably not my favorite, but like the one that comes to mind immediately is, like, how it incorporates that and reappropriates it into its own identity is Helldivers 2 with Starship Troopers.
Okay, that's a great one,
and that's a really easy answer. It's kind of a get out of jail free card in many ways, but so I think what I will do is I'll think on this and come back, because I know there's definitely a reference that I love more than it, but right now I think that I think I'm going to go with that just to kind of.
For those of you that don't know, if you like Helldivers at all, you need to watch the movie Starship Troopers. It's literally amazing, that game is like the movie in game form. So it's also a movie that one of my favorite movies. I love Starship Troopers.
It's amazing. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's probably my answer right now. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're at the end of another episode. It's been awesome. Episode 5. We're really getting some traction here. Let me just make a couple pitches to you guys and we'll get out of here. Yeah, if you guys want to support us on patreon.com/Critical Frames, we have only one tier. It's $5. It's the all access tier. The cool thing is you get a couple of benefits. The most prominent benefit is our Critical Frames Plus episodes. You get one a month, and we just posted our first one. It's an over hour-long episode of Joe and I talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake and our impressions of it, our review of it. That's up there for anyone who's subscribed to our patrons. So go check that out. You also get a Discord, special role in the Discord. You get access to our all access channel. You get to send in a question for the podcast to have answered every week, and you get shouted out at the end of the episode. So it's only $5. That's all we have. It's just one tier. That's all we ask. We got a few people there right now. We really appreciate that. If you guys want to write in an email or a voice clip, you can send that to criticalframes@gmail.com. Come join our Discord. Everyone is welcome there. Find us on Twitter @CriticalFrames. Our boy Wesley is there, generating lots of good discussion and promoting us. We really appreciate it. But that's pretty much it from me, Joe. Do you want to shout out our patrons real quick before we get out of here?
Hey, I've just remembered a reference that I really enjoyed. And
let's hear it.
You won't know this game quickly, but I think the one I'm thinking of is a game called Punch Club. It's an indie game that came out on PC like a while ago, and they've actually come out with a second game, which apparently is much better. And essentially, you go down into this, like you do like pizza. Like you basically, the game is you have to like train for fights coming up to kind of like avenge your father and figure out the mystery behind his death. And you have to. It's like a balancing micro managing game where you have to like kind of work to pay for your food, to work out, etc., etc. And it's like there's lots of homages to old like games of that time, or like 90s pop culture, 2000s pop culture, 80s pop culture. And one in particular is when you're doing the pizza stuff, like you're in the pizza place getting food or whatever, and you're doing a job or whatever, you'll get told like that there's a you have to deliver a pizza, and you go down into the sewers and there's like crocodiles that are clearly in the theme of TMNT.
Okay, that's cool.
And you have to fight them because they're dicks. And it's just awesome because it's like, like the Leo
Mutant Ninja
meme,
Turtles.
Yeah. But yeah, it's dope.
There's so much of that in media. I mean, like I remember there's like a I think there's like a pickaxe in Skyrim that's like Notch's pickaxe because referencing Minecraft.
Yes, there's also one. There's also one in Dying Light where like it's Excalibur. It's a reference to Excalibur and stuff. There's lots of them. I don't like. Again, I still don't know like what my definitive is, but that is a big one for me. That was like.
I'm sure you'll have an even more definitive one when you come back. But that's a good one, Joe, for sure. Go over our patrons real quick, Joe. Shout them
Yeah,
out.
so to shout out our amazing patrons, we've obviously, as Bryan said, we've only got one tier here, so easy entrance and great benefits at just $5 a month. But we have Darren.jpg, Diente D Hombre, Music Tree, Mustard Chief, Trickster, and Wesley Types. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, 6 people already, and we're only 5 episodes in. I would say that's awesome. I mean, that's
mind blowing.
Honestly, you start the patron, and usually you get like no one, and then maybe you'll get one person who like pities you. So, so we really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us. We don't take it lightly, and I think the cool thing about our patron is it's a easy entrance at $5, and that's it. And we don't have like some big tier where we're like, oh, pay us $75 for this. It's just the one at $5, and everyone who's in there, they know they're all on the same page. They're all getting the same thing. It's equal.
Exactly. Yep.
It's not it's sparsed
we
out.
Love you all the same.
Yeah, we love you all the same. So, yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast. We're excited to get back to you next week. I'm sure we'll have lots of juicy stuff to talk about. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later. Peace, guys.
Peace.
PlayStation.